what your market looks like, how is your problem, how are you solving the problem that people within that market have, and what your plan is to overcome the failures in the companies you've found. So I would really, basically, it's a 3-part, very quick. We don't need to have a rehash of who your group is. We don't need to know really what the product is. So high level, what your problem statement is.
You want to put it in the chat, James? Maybe just a quick 3 points? That'd be great. Thanks. And honestly, like, there's going to be a lot of variance in how much you're able to do with the homework. So really, it's just being thoughtful about those prompts. And so what you discovered, what was difficult about it, what was easy about it, you know, all of those things, what it made you reflect on. So like I said, we're not comparing anybody. We're just, you know, there's no such thing as a bad question or a bad point that you weren't in any way thoughtful about. It's just here to just help. Great.
And then another thing that we're going to talk through today in the first hour is we're going to talk through kind of what we're going to be doing over the next 3 months, because we do have a large break between this session and the next session. So talking a bit through market validation. So how are we going to go out and actually validate these ideas that you have? So for those of you who weren't 100% able to complete your market research, over the next 3 months, you're really going to have the opportunity to refine that and really build out a true profile of where your company is going to end up and what your company is going to be. Because our end goal is to, that is a Mustang that is very loud. So the end goal, I'm sitting by a roadside, so sorry. So the end goal of that is going to be that you have validation from potential consumers. Because as I mentioned in the first class, it's 100% about finding those first 100 customers, going out and figuring out who are the first 100 people that are going to buy your product, who are going to subscribe to your service, whatever it is, and why are they interested. Awesome. So kicking us off, who would like to volunteer to go to do the first 30-second?
James, do you want to real quickly just redefine problem statement and its purpose, just real quick, so that the first person can have that in mind?
So the problem statement is, we are creating a X to solve the problem for Y. Basically, we are creating this product because this consumer has this current problem, and we're solving that problem through this process, basically.
And a lot of how I see it framed is when they start with like the problem and then they get the solution. So you get the emotional, like, you know, buy-in. So they'll say something like, James, you probably have a million examples because you see so many pitches, but you know, like I think of our winner from the last Ignition Lab, and she goes, over 65 million tons of, I'm making up this number, of like waste comes from the fashion industry every single year. She showed a picture of like, you know, like all this waste and this pollution and all this stuff. And then she goes, what if you could take a big chunk into that? And, you know, and then she would say the solution is sustainable, where it's still, oh, then the other problem, it might be comorbid with another problem, like, but it's unaffordable. And it goes, now for the first time, we're combining the solution to waste with sustainable clothing line that's also affordable. Does that make sense? So that's the problem statements, and then that's the solution that's offered, like this beam of hope.
Yeah, it's very much like the first part of your problem statement is something that really pulls at the core of the issue. So whatever the core problem you're solving is, so whether that's you're saving the environment, whether you're saving baby seals, whatever it is, like find what people care about in regards to that problem, and really highlight how bad the problem is, and then how you're solving it. Does anybody have any questions? Would it be good for everybody to kind of break out for a minute and figure out what they're going to say?
Yes, please.
Oh, Brandon. Yeah. All right, everybody. Take 5, breakout, and we'll come back, and then we're just gonna do a super quick, everybody running through.
Great. 5 minutes to talk about the 3 items. That sounds good.
Okay, so my deepest apologies. I'm on my phone doing the Zoom, so I can't create the breakout rooms from the screen right now.
Let me see. Breakout rooms. What do you do? Assign manually? Let participants choose room. There we go. How many teams are there right now? I'll just create a bunch of rooms. We'll see how this works. Am I doing it right, Fumika? I have no idea what I'm doing.
Should be, yeah. Okay, so there is the join breakout room option.
Great.
So
Okay. Let's see. Fumi, do you know how I can share the co-host thing? I'm having trouble finding that.
yes, you can share the co-host when you click participants.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking under more. Got it.
Yeah, and then depending on the you can assign it to
Great.
people. Yes.
Thank you. Super helpful.
And I will be going back onto my laptop Zoom in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, great.
So sorry
Should I
about
wait?
that. Yeah.
Should I wait to make you the co-host then? Because if I do it now, will you still have the power when you switch devices?
I probably won't. So once I
Okay.
come back on, yeah.
Just
so
give
sorry
me a
about
heads
that.
up.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Absolutely.
It's easy fix. I see some of our participants look like they're thoughtful and ready, which is great to see.
I appreciate that.
I like the cool, calm, and collected vibe. It's very good. So how are we doing on time? About 2 more minutes?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
They're still not in their separate rooms. We just got that in the chat.
All right. Well, I apologize. I did not learn how to do that. So think about it for yourselves, you know.
Well,
and
is everyone here? I'm assuming you're all in connection with each other, and you all have your own separate chats, and
cell phones or chats.
So, why don't we do this? Why don't we? Everybody who wants to meet separately or set up your own Zoom call, you can pop out of this, pop back in 5 minutes. So,
well, I think some are ready to go right now, and we've already been taking 5 minutes. I don't want to cut too into it. I think, so, you know what I mean? I think maybe we can just go ahead, and people can see also, they'll learn from watching other people that are maybe more prepared go, that can inspire them rather than just talking about it for another 5 minutes, you know? So why don't we just, Is everyone back? Is everybody here? Thank you for working with us on the technology. Yeah, okay, why don't who wants to lead? We can start with us. And then how long, James, do you think would be a good amount of time to do these 3 things? Like 1 or 2 minutes each?
30 seconds
30.
each. Like very quick. Like,
okay.
Boom, boom, boom. I want to hear like 1 sentence problem statement, 2-sentence market analysis, 2-sentence, like very succinct, very quick. And it's not going to be perfect. Nobody's going to do this 100% right. It's going to be, the purpose of this is like working the muscle of being able to speak to your idea quickly and on the spot, which is the thing that a lot of people struggle.
Great, so this is great practice. We won't even put the time pressure on it other than to say, do your best to do it around 30 seconds. That's something that hit, but we won't like have a timer in your face like last time. So, you know, unless we absolutely have to.
We're shutting you off at 45 though. We're shutting you off at 45.
Okay, all right, who wants to go first? Who's the super brave person? Yeah, all right, Freya?
Yeah. So can I?
Okay.
I'm gonna share screen. Okay. Is it okay if I share screen?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure. Do I have to make you the co-host to do that?
Yeah. You have to.
Okay. I can do that. 1 second. So Freya and make co-host. Okay.
All right. So I'm just gonna show you everybody. Could everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes.
So we're Second Skin, and our problem is how people are really afraid to socialize, go out of the house, shop. There's been a lot of self-quarantine and isolation, and it's affected physically and emotionally, mentally, the general population. So our solution for this is to create a series of accessories that are antimicrobial with proprietary fabric that are fashion forward. So our first project is gloves, and they're using a rarely special fabric that uses silver and gold. It's a scientific technology. It does not wash out. It is non-ionic, so it's safe for the environment. And they're washable and sustainable gloves. And they're for women initially, but we're planning on doing them for kids and men and everyone who wants to wear them. And it's going to give a sense of confidence and security. Now, it's not going to solve the problem of COVID, but it's going to give people the confidence to be able to socialize again, to work again, to shop again, to feel a little more part of society. There's been so much isolation. There's been a lot of issues with people getting depressed and unemployment and not really knowing like what to do with themselves, especially people that live on their own by themselves.
Okay, great. Good job.
And that was at 1 minute, 20 seconds in case you wanted to know that information too.
Okay, so I'll mute up. I'll do a better job counting to at least 1 minute. So that was on me. It was a really good job though, and I was really interested. So I think I let it run over. My apologies. But
yeah, that
excellent.
was
Excellent.
Yeah, that was an excellent excellent overview. I think, well, obviously we need to tighten it up a little bit. But I think that you hit a lot of the good points, i.e. people are really struggling with COVID. I think one of the things that would really help strengthen that is when we talk about pulling the heartstrings, it's like literally everyone is feeling this right now. Everyone is feeling the spike of COVID, like anxiety and seasonal affective disorder at unnatural times, despite the fact that it's like winter. So I would highlight that. So really pull at those strings a little bit more at the beginning and make people like highlight exactly how bad the problem is. Like, give me numbers about how many people are affected, or make me feel it because I'm feeling it right now. And you know that. So you can really highlight that
Yeah,
as a personal kind of pull.
I had the numbers. I don't know. Wasn't sure if I was going to present, and I also kept on talking because no one told me to stop. So I really probably could have.
That's my fault.
Okay. But
That's me.
I did have the numbers. They're quite high.
Well, great job, and also like bonus for you for being one of the first to go as well. So thank you again. That's huge. So who's next? We got to go through this quickly because we have two amazing speakers coming up. Okay, why don't we go with, how about, yep. Who do you see, Fumi?
I am seeing Tad Barker.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Get after it, Tad. Get after it.
Tell me when to go.
Whenever you want.
Okay, this is Cookland. Basically, our problem statement is 3 out of 4 people are overweight, and fruit and vegetable consumption are low across all sectors of New York City, all levels of income. We think the best way to improve food consumption is better understanding, and we can make the most impact with children. So our problem statement is building food knowledge and consumption orientation is fundamental for youth to stop bad consumer behavior. So our landscape is NEP programs, which are nutritional education.
I'm opening up the Zoom then.
Only 40% of schools have them. Our landscape is there's like Edible Schoolyard, Grow NYC, Green Bronx Machine, but they're all kind of separate and not working together. We'd like to kind of be the glue in there and get all these programs together, use grants and private school funds, things like that, to create a learning program, which we will use using Minecraft and other off-the-shelf games.
All right.
Awesome.
So
I love that you also brought in the competitive matrix. Good move.
Yeah, that was really good. I think, and I think we're going to hear this a lot today, but just tightening that up, getting more comfortable, speaking to the high points of your pitch just very quickly is going to be a thing. At the end, you threw in Minecraft and others, and I'm curious. I want more, but I also want to get kind of the full experience in that 30 seconds. And I know this was off the cuff and it's not going to be perfect, but these are very good so far.
And I think, James, you can back me up on this, that we've been doing this is our 4th year, and these are the best initial like kind of pitches that I've ever heard, you know, so far this early on. So you guys, you guys might be feeling like it's rough, but you guys are doing awesome. All right, who's next? We got to keep this going. We only have 35 minutes.
So we have a queue. Next up is Robin Smith.
Okay.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Robin. My teammates are Amy, Christine, and Danny. Our statement is 68% of the world's population is projected to live in urban areas by 2050, according to the UN. This means more people living in tighter and often temporary spaces. Our goal is to make these small spaces as flexible and comfortable as possible, with a modular interior construction product that can be used for partitions, green walls, and temporary home renovations. Furthermore, we want to create a product that will be fabricated in a sustainable way and be fully reusable and recyclable. When we looked at other companies in the industry, we found companies that have modular and flexible systems and some that have aesthetically interesting and programmed systems. And we want to bridge the gap between the two. Thank you.
Great.
So thank you.
Awesome.
That was great. I love the problem statement at the beginning. I did, and the numbers at the beginning, I did yearn for a little deeper. Yes, tons of people are moving to cities. Actually, right now they're moving out of cities, but here or there.
Suburbs.
It was perfect pre-COVID. But what I want to hear is kind of what the specific, like, what is the problem for those city dwellers that you're solving? Like, just having a bunch of people in an area doesn't make it truly a problem. Tell me what's the problem you're solving for each of those people.
Good point.
So if you have 5 or 6 people within that really need the thing you're building, get in there, tell me why. But it's like many entrepreneurs do this. It's a thing that literally I've done a dozen times, which is you go in, you pitch your product, you give them a bunch of high level statistics, and then at the end they say, okay, but why would somebody actually buy this? And that's exactly what I felt when I was listening to your pitch. I was like, great, there are lots of people. I want to know why. I'm a city dweller. I have no space. There are no closets in my apartment. Like, tell me why I need to buy this.
That's a great point, James, because I think what we've noticed at Pratt students, you guys are so smart and so ingenious, but not always have the business mindset. And so usually the most common theme that people struggle with is how to monetize a great idea. So not having the great idea, but how to actually make money and generate an eventual surplus and profit.
Thank you.
Excellent job. You guys have been amazing so far. Who wants to go next?
So
I also
next,
think my internet cut out.
Okay.
Sorry. I also feel like my internet cut out in the middle of that. So sorry for whatever I did.
Oh no, it came out. Everything you said came out to me anyways. Yeah. Fumi, who's next?
Yes, Kai, I believe you're up next.
Yeah, so my name's Kai. Our problem statement is that Gen Z is spending half the time outside than previous generations. There's an ongoing climate crisis. And so I'm looking to, with my business, address both of these issues and get students outside while also helping to create an eco-conscious clothing brand. We've noticed that former outdoor retailers, Patagonia, LL Bean, they're no longer serving a young demographic. And so what we're going to do is we are going to address the Gen Z population that's solving this by either modifying their clothing from these retailers or wearing improper clothing. And we're going to make clothing that suits them and allows them to express themselves in the outdoors.
Awesome. Right. So honestly, it's literally the same thing. Like, I definitely feel that there's a market there, and clothing is always different. Like, clothing is a thing that's so up to subjective taste that it really, you can't define a full market by it. But I want to hear kind of that next level. Yes, climate change is a big issue. Yes, there's nobody who's serving that for young people, but at the same time, I want to hear specifically one person. Why would one single human, why do you want this for you? And then how would that apply to others? So really get personal with these. I know it's hard to say like, oh, but I have these big numbers. 30 million people are in this area. But just get really specific and be like, this is why I would buy this. Because the moment you have someone pay for it, you have a customer. Unless only one person pays for it and it's your mom, which has happened to me. So, but try to design it not for your mom.
Awesome. All right, who's next, Fumi?
I believe, correct me if I'm saying your name wrong, but Shuji. I'm sorry.
So our project will be targeting toward Chinese high school students that are interested in art and design careers. So in China, people pay a lot of attention to students' career directions at college, but often neglect the importance of exploring careers that they're actually interested in, which cause students to major in an unfit subject and constantly changing their major in college. So through our research, we found that the existing platforms that help them target ideal careers are all through the result of the Chinese entrance exam, a college entrance exam. So it's similar to the SAT, but the score has far more impact on the choice of their career. So we found that there's a market gap in China where there's plenty of them that help students target college according to their scores, but actually few of them help them choose their career according to their real interests. So we want to tackle this issue by offering a career guidance platform that help provide events, tutorials, education, games, and connections to the real design industry to help them discover and learn about design-related careers. Thank you.
So that was great. The exact opposite problem to everyone else, which is you got very personal, but then you said plenty and lots, which if it's plenty and lots, that means there's going to be numbers speaking to the aggregate about why people want this, because the reality is every parent wants their child to succeed.
Gives plenty and lots of what? What do you mean plenty and
people,
lots? And that
in describing a market size. So saying there are plenty of people who don't find their or have trouble matching their career to this. With applying numbers to that makes it infinitely more powerful.
So being more specific instead of saying like general, like cliches. Okay.
Yeah. So you saying a story of like people have, and it's this deeply personal issue of like these kids are trying to find their careers. They're trying to find their life, and they're taking this test, and it means so much to them. And so many people struggle with the outcome of that test, and that applies to X million people.
Right, like last year, like the UN statistic that the person used to say 68%. It's a very specific amount, and it's citing a relevant resource, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so much more powerful to say a really poignant personal thing, like this really applies to me, and then afterwards going, but it also applies to 22 million other people around the world. Like, yeah, so if you're a person and you would pay $10 for the service, if you then tell me there are 22 million people in the world with your same problem, that's a $220 million market. That's fantastic. And if you do that per month, you're in the billions. So it's make that point when you're talking. Always try to pull the exponent, if you can, into your pitch, where it's like, yes, this impacts me. This impacts 100 people that I know. But in reality, it's impacting 30 million people worldwide, or probably 100 million people. That means a lot.
Awesome. Okay, who's next, Fumi?
Brandon, I believe you are up next.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name's Brandon. I'm on a team with Luke, and together we are creating a community motorcycle garage / cooperative makerspace. We are solving the problem of costly motorcycle storage in the city. Our target market will enjoy dedicated space, resources, and community. This business model isn't necessarily a new one, but it's the first time it's been offered outside of the city. We will locate directly below the Catskill Mountains and along the Metro North train line to offer our users a reprieve from the city and direct access to beautiful riding roads. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Nice and brief, like 32 seconds.
That was good. Brandon, I feel like you've done this before, maybe a few years ago. So yeah, that was great. It was succinct. I deeply wanted numbers. I deeply wanted impact. I want to hear, like, how many people are up in the Catskills that want to ride through? While I've been sitting here, I'm nearish to the Catskills. There have been 5 motorcycle groups that have gone past us. So it's like, tell me numbers. Tell me how many people are going to be going through this. How much of a need is there for this? So it's like, and tell your story. Say like how much you want to go up in the Catskills and ride, and like how you yearn for a place to congregate. And then say, and there are 10,000 people like me in New York alone, because New York isn't the only place that has a beautiful Hudson Valley-ish area with mountains and farms. Like, that's not, so make sure that you're driving that point home.
Thank you, James.
Great job. Fumi, who's next?
Yes. Brendan, Luke, you just went. Gayatri, I believe you are up next with your team.
Yeah, hi. Morning, everyone. I'm Gayatri, and my teammate is Zaya. Yeah, So everyone here knows that the clothing and the textile industry is the largest polluter in the world. And now more than 15 million tons of used textile waste is generated each year in just the United States. 100% of all of these clothing and household textiles can be reused. So now Zolzaya and I are planning to make a sort of website where we have in-house fiber recycling upholstery for our sustainable furniture. Over to Zaki.
All right, so what we're planning to do for the production is to make it local so that we produce as less carbon as we possibly can. And and we source locally and produce and oh my God, I'm failing.
It's okay.
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is do all this locally so that we produce as less damage to the environment as possible.
Thank you.
Great. I also want to say, just from a performance perspective, that I really appreciate that instead of like when you lost your place, you just were calm and just like silent and then found it, and it made everyone more comfortable than if you were like stumbling and flailing. So you handled pressure really well. Good job.
Yeah, that I was going to actually make that comment. That was good. One of the things you can do to avoid that when you're in these kind of scenarios is when you have the 3 points or the 6 points you're trying to make over the course of a speech, just have single words in your head that you can like land on. And so you're structuring your speech in your head, even if it's just like a single word for every section. So then you can actually go, if you know that you're hitting these points, and even if you get to a point where you're like, oh, I lost my place, you know the last word you said, you know the next word you have to say, move through. The second part that I really want you guys to think about is, why would a person use you're building a textile product company. So why would someone sign up with your textile factory? I'm going to call it a factory. It's not a factory, but why would somebody sign up with you? Why would somebody buy from you specifically? Like, it's what problem are you solving for them that is not being currently served in the market? And that's like, because there's eco-friendly textile, there's a lot out there. So it's really about differentiation. How are you making a difference? And this applies to literally everyone here, which is like, how are you taking your current market and how are you expanding on it? And how are you creating something new within that market? If you're going after a market with a lot of incumbents, like massive companies that are really trying to take everything over, no, why will you be successful going after that market? If you're going after a market that has like very few incumbents, why has nobody approached that space? And the ones that have, why did they fail? Like, make sure that what you're bringing to the market is 100% new and why somebody can buy.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize that. So looks like we still have about 6 or so people to go, and we want to make sure we get through this. So Foom, let's
Yep. Just a small thing for this group. It would be interesting for them to read Fashionopolis. I read down in the chat, but a lot of people talked. It's a very interesting book that can inspire you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So who's next?
Hi, I'm Devanshi, and I can go next.
Okay.
So food containers and packaging contribute to 30% of generated municipal solid waste. That is about 80 million tons. Restaurants use single-use plastic packaging because it is cheap and convenient. About 74% millennials and 72% Gen Z consumers are willing to pay more for sustainable products and services. So I am creating a sustainable food kit assembled of organic containers and upcycled glass bottles that would be leak-proof and reusable. Upcycling glass will largely cut costs of material. So this is an ideal solution to combat plastic pollution and be affordable for restaurants. Thank you.
Great. 39 seconds. Good job. James might be out.
So up next, oh, sorry. Oh, never mind.
So my internet went out for the first 5 seconds of that.
Okay.
But what I heard was good and succinct. The 39 seconds was really good. Everyone's frozen right now, so you can't hear me. That's good.
We can all hear you, James. And I would add to that I loved, Devashi, your use of like specific statistics. Just like we were saying earlier, you actually pulled out like actual metrics demonstrating how this percentage of like Gen Z and millennials would actually pay for sustainability and so forth. And so that's super helpful, especially if you're pitching to like seed, funders like VCs or whatever. So that's exactly what they want to hear, is that you provide metrics that show evidence and people are actually willing to invest in this.
Okay, thank you.
Great job.
Up next. So we actually have an ongoing list. It's gonna go Xuan Yuan next, Sayer. Again, sorry, like please let me know if I'm like messing up everyone's names.
It's too hard, it's fine.
And then after Sayer, it's gonna be Mia. And then Team Bagas will requested to go last. So right now it's in that list. So please just let me know who wants to speak next.
Okay, I can go next. Shuhao?
Yeah, Xuan Yuan, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, I'm ready. Okay, so we're creating an app that will help with waste management by making people become more aware of it. The market needs our solution because littering is a problem that is detrimental to the environment and our health. Previous companies have failed to address related problems because they struggled to maintain necessary permits, as well as failing to implement their optimization, growth, and cost-saving initiatives and overall business strategy, which is lack of sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
28 seconds. Great.
So, loved the succinctness. Loved the you definitely, there's a problem there, but the reality is that I don't feel like I didn't hear a reason for someone to pay for this. Like, so what part of the reason why a lot of these sustainability initiatives fail is because they don't have and I know it's hard to do this when you're thinking about almost philanthropic kind of things, but like there needs to be a way for you to make money off of this. And so it's like figuring out why someone would pay for this, what is the personal reason someone would pay, is really a major driver for what you're doing. So great. Saving the environment, recycling, making sure like saving the world is great, but it's really hard to do if people aren't paying for it. So like figure out a way that someone will actually pay for this. Go out and find the problem that you're really solving for each individual person that would be doing this.
And James, would you say a way to do that is to look at companies that are already like people are willing to pay a little bit more for because of how they're presenting sustainability, their impact? Is that one strategy you'd recommend?
People will pay more. Yeah, so one of the things that I would look at is actually the concept behind conspicuous consumption. So the idea that someone will pay to be seen doing something. So people will pay more, like back in the day, people would pay more for Starbucks for the green straw. They did studies and they found when they took away the green straw, people were less willing to buy Starbucks because people were seen with the green straw for Starbucks. So the idea of conspicuous consumption is really important. And specifically when you're doing sustainability initiatives. So going out and making it so that your brand comes first, that's a way like to pseudo shame people into paying for your product. So like you have a brand that says sustainability. You have a brand that says like forward movement, saving the planet. And if people don't subscribe to that, they don't care about the planet. That's a way to do it.
All right, so who's
okay,
next?
One quick second. My daughter is right here.
That's adorable.
Up next is Sayer.
Hi, I'm Seher.
Seher. Okay, got it. Thank you.
No, don't worry, close enough. Okay, so I feel like there are a lot of fashion people here, and I'm just going to add to the numbers. But I'm hoping to start a socially conscious clothing line that sells everyday wear for women. Aesthetically, the clothes are an homage to traditional South Asian design, and they will be marketed to women who are strong and independent, but also see themselves as strong and independent. There's not so much a problem that I'm solving, but there's a vacuum at the market as I see it. And what I mean by that is that there's a certain sort of South Asian design that's been popularized and mass-produced, rolled over, but there's also a lot that's missing. And that a lot, I feel like, has a lot of potential. And so I want my clothes to explore that. The social elements of the brand are that a certain percentage of my sales are going to be donated to female empowerment in South Asia.
Great. Okay. Sorry, you gotta unmute yourself now, or maybe I can.
Oh no,
there
that's
you go.
fine.
Okay, got it. Great. So, you know, this one is screaming visual. Like, I think it's hard to pitch something that's so visual because all I wanted to see is like your beautiful designs and stuff. That was, you know, so I think that would really help. Not
So
your fault.
So I don't buy that there's not a problem statement because you're building this for a reason, which means that you have a problem that you think you're solving, even if it's for you. So to me, that says that there's a need for kind of a revisit of the drawing board and going in and saying, okay, how am I solving this problem for me? Why do I care about this? And if the reason you care about this is that you think it's a good idea, that's not really great. But if the reason you care about this is something that's personal and means something, then go and try to find people that this means something to as well. Like, then it's going out and saying, okay, how many people feel like I do? How many people are in my situation? And expand the horizon of your problem that you are solving.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
Great job. All right, who's next? So it looks like Mia.
Hi, my name is Mia. I'm with Blue Body Packs. Currently, cork trees are being cut down because the wine industry has moved to plastic stoppers. But what if you could buy accessories made of cork fabric to help these farms grow and save the earth? Blue Body Packs will help people who want durable packs that are also conscious of our dying earth. Many large brands such as Coach or Louis Vuitton and Prada, while they have desirable designs for youth culture, they use a lot of leather. And sadly, cow leather farms have been crowding the Amazon rainforest at this point. Around 70% of the Amazon rainforest has been cleared to make way for these sort of leather farms.
Great. Okay, 31 seconds. So, James, are you with us? You might be having technical.
I heard like half of that.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
again,
I heard
great,
like half of that. I have
great use of, from a performance perspective, great use of pacing, great use of presenting the problem up front using like actual statistics. I would be careful of hyperbole of dying earth, because that's something that some people might agree with, and then other people might feel like, well, the earth isn't dying because maybe it's just the earth is in trouble right now, but it'll recover. So that's just from that point, you know, that you might lose some of your audience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the earth's gonna be fine. It's just us that's gonna die.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay, yeah.
That's kind of a morbid way of putting it, but yeah. So James, what do you think in terms of, I mean, I know that I was excited about this product when I first heard about it, you know, and I didn't know anything about cork. For me, I thought cork was actually, they're running out of cork and that's why they're redesigning the wine caps. You know, I remember that's like a common myth, I believe. Is that right, Mia?
Yeah, it's like a false myth that the wine companies sort of started to have a cheaper like stopper.
I'm excited. I thought you did a fantastic job. I thought it was really professional, and I'm intrigued, and it makes me want to learn more about your product, you know, and it makes me want to learn about your price points. And then it also makes a cool story that if I buy your product, I can be like, this is made out of cork. And did you know that wine companies, that's all propaganda or whatever. So I love it. I thought it was really great. All right, who's next? Sorry, James.
I think it's also, and I think this is a thing I've said to you before probably about this, is I want to see prototype specifically around this, and that goes for every like unique kind of textile fashion thing. I need to see prototypes, but also I want to hear a reason why I should buy it. So like if I'm remembering, cork is more durable than leather. It's lighter than leather, and it can take, so like maybe bags are falling apart, and that's causing X damage, X millions of dollars of loss a year, having to rebuy bags. With cork bags, you don't have to do that very often.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. So not only is it better for the environment, also how is it durable enough so you won't just go through it like after a year? So that's a great point, James. All right, so we are running out of time, and we want to have time for us to go over the homework before Ray joins us. So let's see, who do we have?
There are 2 teams left, Soleil Studios, and then it will go to Team Bagas.
Great. Soleil Studios.
Awesome. Hello. I'm Katie Rose. I am not met by my partner. It's also very, very enthusiastic where I am. So pardon me for the horns and honking and exciting things. But I am creating a content creation, so creative advocacy. And this is based off of similar templates like Deus Ex Machina, which is a studio as well as an adventure tourism shop. So it will be in the future brick and mortar, but right now in COVID, it's a online platform that provides wellness and sustainability coaching for brands and advocacy. And
wow. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And to speak on the industry, it's based out of the $4.5 trillion global wellness industry. So being competitive in the sense that we have a sliding scale for membership. So you can provide with this kind of 80-20 rule. So 80% of profit comes from luxury clients and 20% sliding donation scale.
Great. Let's see. So I don't know if we've lost James or not, our entrepreneur.
No, I heard
residence.
it. I heard it.
Okay.
All of my previous comments apply there. I like the numbers. I like the approach. I like the succinctness. I want to be pulled. I want to feel like something emotional. I want to feel, but yeah, that was very good. It was very succinct.
Also great, again, great smoothness to your presentation, great pacing where you're not rushing the information, you're taking your time so the your main points are landing really well. So that's great. And what James said is 100% on. The only things it felt almost too, gracefully perfect. And like it'd be nice to have like some type of urgency or excitement at the beginning to hook us in, and then calmly being so here's the problem, and here's the solution, and we're really excited about this solution.
Awesome.
Also, the name is so like if you can somehow make us feel hopeless around the problem and then provide the solution, I feel like it'd provide nice symmetry around the name, but that's just because the name of it is Deus Ex Machina. So
yeah. The theater, I'm sure most of you know Deus Ex Machina is like from Greek theater, where it comes in and rescues the protagonist when all seems lost. So, yeah, it's a great name. Okay, so who do we have next?
It will be Wen Jing.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, and then after Wen Jing, it'll be Team Bagas.
Okay. So I find the need in our current society to advocate on environmental issues and gather like-minded people to work towards solutions And my product, the jewelry pieces, embodies symbolic concepts that allows the users to express their ideology by simply wearing them and engage with people. So I believe work and formal settings bears the most effective resources and powers. Therefore, my products not only represents the owner's status, wealth, and ideology, but it also sparks dialogues on the critical issues and creates actions towards making changes to the society.
Great, 47 seconds.
So that to me, like, it's a great idea, good direction. It lacks directness for me. So like, I want to hear how you're solving a problem for a person. One of the biggest issues that I'm hearing there is that, like, you're, for lack of a better term, you're saving society. But how? And I want to hear kind of like directly, who is this impacting? How is it impacting them? And how many people does that spread out? Where's the virality in the concept? Because if you don't have people adopting and moving forward with the concept, you're gonna have trouble expanding this beyond the first few people.
Great. So it looks like we have exactly time for our very last person. We have 2 minutes left. We'll take like a minute or two break and then we'll have Ray, who will begin at about 1:02. So our last team, Baguettes.
We'll also do homework.
Oh yeah.
Hi, so we are Team Bagasse. We are using byproduct from sugarcane industry, which create 22 million tons of bagasse each year that mostly goes into waste right now. It is a biodegradable material that only takes 45 to 90 days to compose in soil. This nature fiber has a high moldability, water or oil resistant, and other features allow this material to made into different shapes and forms. We're focusing markets that's interested in cradle-to-cradle approach, such as toy industry, textile industry, and medical industry that improve bagasse resource efficiency to create economic productivity and social equity.
We're done.
That's it.
All right. So I think you know what I'm gonna say, which is I want to feel it. I want to know, like, we've talked about bagasse. Bagasse is cool. Why am I buying this? Why am I, like, yes, it's saving things, but like, what is the thing that my life can't deal without, that when there are other environmentally friendly textiles out there? Like, how does this different from the market? And how is the problem it's solving different from the market? I think that if you can nail that down, you have a real, like, this, there's a real thing here. There's a real thing here. There's a real thing with cork. I want to hear, though, like, how you're twisting the market, how you're flipping the market on its head. Because right now it's like, that's such a cool concept, but I'm wondering, how does it compete with everything else?
And James, I think a theme that I'm wondering is, how many people here, if they heard their exact pitch, would be like, I want in on that investment, right? So I think that's a good question to ask yourself, like, really honestly, if you're to objectively look at your product, would you, if it was presented to you, be like, I want in on that? And if your answer isn't yes, and if you don't believe that, then there's no way you're going to be able to do that for someone else. And so then you can then go into, what would I need to adjust so that then I would be interested? And I think that's really helpful to kind of get objectivity on your own, because we often get so excited and attached to our ideas, we lose some objectivity.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's one of the exercises I like to do when I think about this, is I like to think about the most cynical person in my life.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
Oh no, I wanted to talk, but it's fine. Do we have time for just like say one thing?
Yeah, Nate, go for
Great.
it.
Awesome. So, because I'm on the team with Amber, so basically, because currently now we're in a phase where we're kind of testing the waters to see in which industry it would suit best. So, for us to be thinking about the consumer is going. So, this was part of the email we sent you guys before, is us going just a step forward in advance, and it's called like, so people see it as solutionizing. So it's I love the feedback, but I'm wondering what would you guys suggest for us not to jump in a phase where we're solutionizing? Like, for example, we're setting, okay, we're going to be this company and we're going to target these consumers. Okay, how would you guys suggest for us not to jump ahead, but at the same time, take these consumers you guys are referring to into consideration at this current stage? Except for example, yeah.
So one of the things with the school of thought that you're working on, that kind of top-down methodology around building, is that it's capital intensive to get off the ground. So if you're looking at many vertical markets at the same time and saying, okay, which of these do we solve the problem for? That takes time. And if you're willing to invest that time, and by capital, I don't just mean like dollars, I mean your time, because your time is money. And so if you have the time to well research 30 different markets and figure out exactly which one is the best place for you to insert yourself and solve that problem, that's great. The reality is that if you can find a single customer for what you're doing, wherever they are, and then look at how many other people, how many other companies are like them, because I think you're looking at more of a targeted B2B model. If you're looking at that, find one company that would buy your services, then go find another 10, then go find the smallest market you can that you really solve a problem for, and then use the money you make from doing that to expand out and target new markets. Because the reality is you can't boil the ocean, and it's really important to find and Ray will speak to this, where it's like he's worked with companies that have the capital to boil the ocean and go out and target everyone at the same time. But the reality is, if you're doing a B2B model, it's find one customer, because one customer will make your business.
Look at that. So that's so interesting. It's like the piece of a pie, and then you find the little crumbs that form the bigger piece of the cake. It's an expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you can't create a pie without a grain of flour.
Exactly. Without the crumbs.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys say it. Great.
I love it. No, I love the analogy. All right. And speaking of which, we are fortunate enough to have Ray join us. I want to be conscious of his incredibly valuable time. And so right now we will just focus on the assignment, which you guys will have to like really be interesting and engaging and learning, that will, first of all, be fascinating for you. You'll get a lot out of just doing, great learning and growth. And then you'll have something to really work on when we get back together in the beginning of February. So, James.
Yes. So from an assignment standpoint, the one thing you're going to do, and I actually really appreciated Team Bagas and your comment, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing for the next few months until we meet again. You're going out, you're interviewing 100 people. You're going out and you're going to start looking for that customer, looking for that one customer, looking for that first 100 customers. Get out there in the world and structure interviews, structure questions, build your customer profile, and apply that against the problem statement you already have, and continually refine that problem statement. Figure out, does this problem statement actually work? Is this problem statement solving something? So this means go out, interview your friends, interview the people you know, interview family. I know it's hard in a Zoom world to do it, but put out a Google form on LinkedIn, put out a Google form somewhere else, get information, get feedback. For those of you that are doing B2B, call prospective clients, call the people that you might be working with. Say, I'm a student, or I'm an entrepreneur, I'm working on this thing. Do you have a few minutes to talk to me? never underestimate the power of that. But it's all about work at this point. Just getting out there, talking to people, coming up with that. When you get back, we're going to be doing a minute each of talking through what you found over the break. What are these problems? How do they actually impact your problem statement? And what does it all mean for you as a business?
Awesome. So, and we can talk about this more at the very end of this session. You can go over any questions you have at the end. And in the meantime, I can't wait to now introduce Ray. Are you ready?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, Carrie, great. So I'm gonna just, before, let Ray introduce himself. Ray, I've made you co-host so you can screen share if you have a slide deck. And I just want to say personally, Ray's one of the most accomplished people I know and also an amazing human being. So I'm so excited that he's coming here and is a genuinely giving person. So he loves any questions that you'll have after his presentation. Don't be shy. And so if something sparks when he's presenting, you know, he's really great at just quickly breaking down problems and coming up with solutions on the spot. So definitely take advantage of that if you can. And Ray, oh, sorry.
Well, real quick, if anybody needs me, unfortunately I have to go at this moment, but if anyone needs me for anything, hit me up in the Slack channel. I've already gotten a few messages. Hit me up in the Slack channel. I'm happy to hop on a call with anyone to talk through this anytime between now and the next session. I'm really happy to set up working sessions, talk through things, and do office hours if people want.
Thank you, James. Great having you. I'm glad during all the chaos you still prioritized this and made it. It's much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And awesome. All right, and Ray, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Carl, and thanks for those words. Very kind. I'm not sure I can live up to them. I try. So the background basically is I put that up there because I moved to Madison, Wisconsin last year to have some space of mind to be more creative and connect better with my family and do the things I'd like to do rather than I feel like I had to do. I moved from New York in last July, 2019, July before last. And so far so good. I'll take you through the evolution in a way of my career because it might hopefully shine a little bit of light on what you're doing. And you can ask questions, you can interrupt me at any time. And how much time do I have, Carl, to present something? I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Jen is joining us at 2, but as you saw, there might be like a little bit of overlap just because we started a little bit late and we wanted to make sure all the teams, and then James could say the homework piece before he had to go. So,
sure.
You know, around ballpark 2 o'clock.
Sure. How many teams are on Zoom right now?
Fumi, how many teams are there about? I think we have about like 12 or so today. Somewhere in that ballpark, 12 to 14.
Okay, I mean, normally I'd like to hear about each team or each person's, you know, situation and to know a little bit more so I can tweak what I have to say that's more relevant. But I think it's really tricky with Zoom to do that, unless you think that's a good idea, Carl?
Well, I think it's a great idea, but first I want to know who you are. So I know like who this wise person is that's giving me feedback. I don't even know anything about what you've done or who you are.
Okay, so you know what? Let me take you guys through a presentation to present something of my past, and then we can talk about how it might be. You can choose from there to see if there's anything relevant to what you do and ask questions. So, okay, just some personal background. I told you where I'm at now. I grew up in India, in Bombay, when it was called Bombay, grew up Catholic, and they taught me to pretty much question everything. So, because in school, they taught me creationism, the Big Bang. And in church, they taught me creationism, and I thought there was a conflict there. So they said, yep, we really don't know. It's up to you to go find out yourself. So therefore, what did I do? I got into advertising of all things. So I'll share my screen with you. And tell me if you see it or when you see it, Carl. So I'll know.
Okay.
You see anything now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Huh.
Now it looks like, yes, now I do. Advertising. Got
Okay.
it.
So I showed up in New York to be in the mecca of advertising. I went to Syracuse, where it was the feed school for New York City. And my first assignments were very big, national, international assignments, and I didn't quite like what I was doing. But it gave me some training on developing a process of creativity to apply to business. And I'll go through some of the work I've done, how I got there, my process, which might be reinforcing actually what you guys are doing. And then we take it from there. So I'll go through, why is this not shifting? Okay. An assignment I got many years ago was to have New Yorkers donate coats. And New Yorkers are jaded. I'm assuming a lot of you are in New York right now, or all of you are. So New Yorkers, as you know, well know, are bombarded by stuff all the time, like from cars honking, as I just heard, to messages, to, you name it. Yeah, you know that. So how does one touch a New Yorker emotionally in the middle of all this noise? And I was in the tail end of your last conversation, where I think James mentioned you've got to hone in on your audience. So how do you connect to sell an idea, or to have a New Yorker do something that they're not necessarily open to doing because they're constantly asked to donate stuff, or someone on the subway is begging for money? It's just nonstop. So how do we get them to do something? So, but what's the insight here is that New Yorkers are generally helpful and they want to help. So the insight is to do something that give them something easy to do, and don't make them feel like, don't turn them off. They're already emotionally bombarded. So be gentle with their emotions and then give them something open to do. So this image, and forgive the pixelation, this presentation was meant for another format, but I developed this image that ran on the subway. So people felt sad, they felt it, and with a simple thing to do that said, donate your coat. And that's when I realized a simple image can make a big difference to a business. It's not as, it's not just, do I like something, but it actually moves the needle on accelerating a business. And I looked at New York Cares, which was the client, as a business. So when this ad ran, there used to be 12,000 coats donated per year. And the next year, there were 80,000 coats when this ad ran. And now it's a few million, because they run it every single year. And I realized that not just what we do, what I do, what advertising did works, is fun, but it's work. It could work and be measurable. And I realized that that's tremendous power, and this is pre-internet. So this is a long time ago. So I realized now, during the internet, that good storytelling and imagery is super important, but it all has to be based on an insight. So the insight here was, New Yorkers are too bombarded. Don't give them something frightening. As in, previous to what I did, people would have, people frozen and dead and stuff like that, and would turn people off. So my instinct was to do something very gentle. So they were like, felt a little sad, and give them something easy to do. Just give me a coat, go put it in this box. Okay, so then I realized, but I have a problem. As in, I solved the tactical problem of selling the product, let's put it like that, which is getting people to donate. But the client who ran, the director or CEO of New York Cares, came to me and he said, Ray, a few years later, he said, people now are overwhelmed by this ad and they don't know New York Cares. As in, they don't know that there's so much else we do. They think we're just coat guys. We run the coat drive. I realized I have a flaw in what I do. I need to go deeper. I was dissatisfied. So I looked at the time, branding emerged as something that I found interesting because it went deeper. And with very good mentors, I learned that brand is not just a look and a feel, but it's synonymous with a business. It's all of it. The artifacts of the business are what I purchase as a souvenir of the lifestyle that the brand is. So, that's a very powerful approach if one looks at it like that, as opposed to just looking at it like, okay, I got a logo and that's my brand. It's a way bigger idea than just a look and feel. So that would have helped New York Cares if I'd taken that approach, but I didn't, because the assignment as given to me was get coats out. Okay, so with that, and I'm giving you two New York examples because you're there and you're familiar with all this, with what I'm showing you. So the next, and this is many years later, I had my own business and my assignment was the Empire State Building. And as you know, or maybe you don't, at the time, the Empire State Building was just this tourist trap. No New Yorker in his or her right mind would even go there. It's like your relatives visit and you say, go to the Empire State Building if you want. I'm not going to go with you. And I kind of felt sad because, as an immigrant coming to America, and this was a symbol for me. New York was a symbol. The Empire State Building was a symbol of individuality and the greatness, symbolic greatness of America. And I felt kind of like, why is it this tourist trap? So the assignment as given to me by the owner at the time, there was an owner, one man owned the building. He said, we want more visitors to the observatory, which, by the way, might seem like a small assignment, but it's not, because it's $160 million a year business with around 65% profit margins. So basically, you put people in an elevator, you send them up there, and you're raking in the money. So it's an enormous business for not doing very much. But the problem he had was these tourists, it was a tourist trap. So everyone was like, oh, the Empire State Building. And it's such a beautiful thing. And the other problem he had was in summer, you have lines sometimes 3 hours long. And in winter and nighttime, there's no one there. So that's highly inefficient. So we had to solve that problem. How do we get people there at different, at what they call shoulder periods, when it was not typical to be crowded? Once again, you have to focus on your audience and go, who are these people now? The Empire State Building has a massive audience, as you know, it's global. So we have to study, how many people come there from which parts of the world, who we will focus on, and what the major insight is. And the major insight that emerged, and we studied people from, coming into the building and, grouped them into, the big chunks, like Americans were the biggest, Chinese were next, and then there was a slew of European countries. So we had to focus essentially on Americans and Chinese and a couple of European countries because those were the most focused audience, and we could extrapolate from there based on the insight we got from them. And the insight was that they would come to New York wanting to go to this building. It was on their list. But the minute they came into JFK or wherever, they were bombarded with stuff to do. Broadway, restaurants, you name it. And they, boom, 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 constant, do this, do this, do this. And wherever they would stay in New York, they wouldn't go further than like a couple of miles radius. And maybe they'd leave and come back. So then they'd get distracted with Century 21 shopping or whatever, which, by the way, is bankrupt now, really sad. But anyway, they would get distracted by all these different things and not go to the Empire State Building. So, but how do we get to them? How do we talk to them so that they're not, looking at this thing as a tourist trap or just another headache, or competing with other observatories which are popping up in New York, a ton of them. So our insight was go back to the history of this building and make it the heart of New York City. So we brought back that strength of its past, that you have to be the symbol of New York and the symbol of America and speak to it. Like, not just say, come on in, go up there and take your money and get out of here, as a tourist, but really connect with your audience. So we worked on inspiring each visitor at a time was the idea that we presented to the owner, and to look at the entire building as an experience and not just the observatory. So it was shifting the mindset of the owner from, oh yeah, this is not just a money-making enterprise. I have something that's very important to the city and the country and the world, and I can inspire people to do better. And he actually felt that. We took him through the process. It's a very psychological process to get someone through it. It's not like, okay, just telling him what to do, but it's movements. It's work for him to do to perceive himself differently. And then I realized, okay, branding is super powerful because it can translate. And again, forgive these are old images. If you look at their website now, they've changed it. But with that concept of heart of New York City, which by the way, it pulses red every Valentine's Day. And that's just one manifestation of the brand idea, the heartbeat, to just go along with the heart. So that, brand can exist in many ways. One of them was lighting. And we did that, tickets and all these different things, artifacts of a brand. But one of the things I liked was, they had a partnership with these businesses in the area, like Macy's and MSG and Flatiron Building and the theater district, where if you create a map and you tell a tourist, okay, start at the building, and you can get all these discounts from these different things, you already improved their experience, their New York experience. And it's heartfelt, it's given to them. You come here, you have this amazing view and experience. We are treated really nicely. We scripted the employees of the building, so they weren't like, take your belt off and get into the machine, the security machine. But they were polite. They were like, where are you from? Finding out what may interest them to say, oh yeah, you should go to Central Park because I'm sure you'll love that. Give them little tips. And anyway, the brand, one of the manifestations of the brand was a business idea, which is to collaborate with these different businesses to give people discounts so that when they came here, they had a better tourist experience. And that was one idea. Another one that is, I haven't put in here, but we came up with having the sunrise experience. So, for $100, you go up there and, it's a limited amount of people. And that, again, they add one more security guard and that's it. So for a $15,000 investment, they sold 100 tickets a day at $100 a pop. So you can imagine the profit margins on a product change like that. And that all comes from the concept of the heart of New York City. How do you bring that to life? So a simple line defining a feeling can manifest itself in many ways in brand. So, I'm showing you this slide because just to deliberately show you how confusing things could be. As a business owner, you may come up with your idea, your concept, whatever that concept is. Like, I heard a little bit of what you guys were talking about. How do you get that out there? And it's so confusing, from automation to all these different tools you have available to you. How are you going to use them? So there is a process that you can apply to identify how to use those tools well and efficiently, because you don't want to waste money. You want to focus on, as James was just saying, the one person who's interested in your product rather than everybody. You can't focus on everybody. You just have to focus on that mindset that goes, oh yeah, I want that thing, rather than forcing someone to buy something that they just are not interested in. So how do you find that person? Okay, so there is a process. So then this is the company that I started, a second company. And I work with my partner who's in New York, and he's an analyst and I'm more the storyteller, but we kind of shift our strengths. I mean, we shift our focuses depending on the client. So I'll give you an example of an assignment that we had. This thing is a mattress pad. You put it on top of your mattress and it cools the body temperature down to 68 degrees, some around 3 o'clock in the morning. Because when your core temperature is at 68, your body releases a certain type of hormone that fixes your, I guess, broken cells, for lack of a better word.
Human growth hormone.
Yeah, something, I'm not sure which one, but I didn't get into the science of it, but something to that effect, yes. And if you didn't go down to that temperature, you didn't sleep as well. And I was astounded. I had no idea that sleep was that, temperature was that important for good sleep. I just thought it was time and light. So I thought this was a great product for me to take on because it was so easy in a way to communicate its uniqueness. But look at the thing. It looks like a medical device. Like I go into a hospital and I'll be like, ugh. So the reason the client came to me, the entrepreneur, a guy like you, like you're entrepreneurs, and he, at the time, his problem was, he goes, Ray, man, I'm selling to all these cool people like Tim Ferriss and LeBron James. And he goes, but no one else knows about us. And I don't know how to get further out. And he goes, I want to go 4X and 20X, 4 times my sales and grow my company 20 times. And I'm just kind of stuck. So I was like, okay, so we applied our process to this guy, and I'll take you through the process. So first step is to analyze the business, as in what, before we start creating, look at the problem that we're trying to solve. Articulate the problem you're trying to solve. So you analyze, and then there are 4 or 5 areas of query, like buckets of inquiry, that you can apply to analyze your business, rather than analyzing everything. You can't analyze everything. You have to pick the right things to analyze. Now, you probably know all this, but I'll go over it again anyway. So, and if you don't, at least it's in one spot. There are 4 main buckets to your areas of inquiry. There's the audience, which is incredibly important, and you mentioned a little bit of that. You should analyze your current audience if you're selling a product, and you should analyze your future audience, and what's the difference, and what's the link. There is a link and there is a difference. Analyze it for those 2 things. You analyze the competition. Who is eating your lunch? As in, if someone's not spending money on this mattress pad, where is the money going? And I mean, like, literally competition. Carl, you want to
Ray, can I jump in? Can I jump in on one thing with the audience? Like, what I've noticed, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, is a lot of teams, when they just did their pitch before you joined us, they would say, we're pitching to Gen Z. And so what would you say to someone who starts out just pitching to Gen Z? Because of course, Gen Z will age, and then they might want to scale their product. Would that be an example of current and future?
Yeah, I would say, well, before going to current or future, if they're selling their product already, then it's current. And then I'd ask, because we want to go expand audiences. So I'd want to know who their future audience is. But to find out who their future audience is, I'd want to study the current audience they're selling the product to. So the one thing I would say is Gen Z, great. You've already narrowed it down tremendously. But who and what within Gen Z exactly is the type of individual who will love your product, that you're not going to try too hard, and I'll go through the process as I go through, and it'll speak for itself a little bit more. But please do this and ask me questions is just totally fine. And just please feel free to jump in. I won't feel interrupted. The second bucket to inquire, I talked about the competitive set. Just pick your top 3 or top 5 and think about it. If you're a restaurant, like, why are they going to that restaurant and why not mine? When it's perfect for that person. So just try to analyze your competition. And then there are the relevant trends, as in who, my example over here is the sleeping pad, this mattress pad. What are the relevant trends that affect sleep at the moment? The big social moves. So you're not just studying your competitive set, and you're not just studying your audience. You're studying the big trends, and you see how you fit in naturally. Okay. Then you have to identify the vision of your own company, your own vision. We don't do that as a helper of a business. That's your thing, but we can help you sharpen your vision so that when you say it, people just get it. They know what you're doing. The whole key is not to keep it confusing, because the vision you use, not just for yourself, but you use it for your team who understand what it is, and they go, oh yeah, I like that. I know what I'm going to do to make that vision real. So that's why vision is important. And the last most important thing is to study the business of the brand as it is. Like the good, the bad, the ugly is how I wrote that. Like, you got to know everything, because therein is where you find the uniqueness and the difference and the problems. And sometimes you can flip those problems around and make them advantages, or actually tell them, change that, don't do it that way. Your functioning of your business when you're doing this analysis. So it's really helpful to a CEO or an entrepreneur, a founder, I should say. Any questions over here? Because I can keep going. I'll keep going. So who was the current audience of this mattress pad guy? It was LeBron James, it was Tim Ferriss to your left, and it was this Olympian, Special Olympian. She was an amazing woman. And they used this product and they swore by it. In fact, Tim Ferriss kept pushing it because he loved it so much, but his audience was limited. He was selling a few $100,000 worth of product, but not nearly where he wanted to be or where his investors wanted to be. LeBron James it was known to have said to one of his teammates, he said, yeah, you guys go ahead and party all night. He goes, this is what I do. I go home and I sleep well. And he goes, the difference? I make 100 million and you don't. So it's all about performance, right? Optimizing your performance. So these are the insights I started gaining from my research about the current audience. And it was about high performance. It was about, hacking your body, which is Tim Ferriss. And it was about, health improvement. And I'm like, okay, those are a little extreme, as in, that's the reason why I'm not selling that many, because I'm not Tim Ferriss and I'm not LeBron James and I'm not this incredibly, capable and accomplished woman. I'm just a guy who wants to be a little more healthy. And that is the key. You guys were just mentioning Gen Z. Carl, you mentioned someone looking to target Gen Z. So that's my current audience was this, high performance group of people. But instead of going for everybody on the planet, yes, everyone on the planet needs to sleep better, no doubt. But I don't want to talk to the guy on the couch with a beer watching Netflix all day because he's just not going to do it. He's not interested. He's like, why would I spend $350 on this mattress pad? I don't give a damn. But I want to talk to the people who are interested. The woman who's eating well, the CEO who says, I need to sleep better because I'm not doing that well. I get up tired every morning, Or the guy who just runs, like my wife, she runs. She's not like, crazy super athlete. She just runs every day, which is cool. So how could these people who are open to improving their lives, they are the people we want to focus on, not the people that we go are never going to do it. So that's the focus of the audience we were just talking about.
Ray?
Yeah.
I have a question because it's very interesting. Because I was going to say when you were talking about the 3 different types of audiences before, it reminded me exactly of the extreme cases and of universal design. So it's like, I don't know if that's the same case as OXO, the brand of so what they actually did is they focused on universal design. They actually took their target audience was people with extremes. So people that have either arthritis, professional athletes, etc. And they focused on these specific extremes and they targeted them because when you target those specific people, you're actually targeting what's in between, and what's in between is exactly your wife or those type of people, like this actual slide right here. So that's actually what you did right there. And
Exactly.
Kurt is showing us.
That's a good analogy. It's the same type of thing where, it's the classic surfing branding idea. There were a few surfers in the 60s, 70s who made their own t-shirts and their own graphics and all that stuff. But eventually everyone started using, surfing t-shirts and surfing graphics, even though they weren't doing that. But that's the same idea. When you focus on a very narrow, specific audience, people just start going, oh, I like that thing because it's just used so well. So the key is to find your audience and really connect with them. Your business should feel like a human connecting with the audience. That's the idea of what you're doing. You're doing your product, you're busy, you're working your finance systems and everything's hitting the fan. But your business has got to feel like a human connecting with your audience. And you've got to put all these mechanisms in place to do it. Some people do it instinctively. I look at Elon Musk and I'm like just in awe of how he does it without any process that he expresses. But as he says, I'm hyperlogical. None of this is magical. None of this is, they call him crazy. And he goes, well, I don't know about being crazy. I'm just hyperlogical. So what I'm trying to do is give you a hyperlogical process to be able to tell your story and apply it to digital communications. And also, come up with new products. So we've gone through audience. The competition turned out to be, things ranging from pillows to Ambien to Sleep Number. And it's like, oh God, how do I compete with these 3 things? It's tough. People spending money on these things rather than on a mattress pad. So, okay, competition, tough. The trends were, again, this is a few years ago, but, paleo diet was a big deal. Ariana Huffington wrote this book about the sleep revolution. Of course, yoga and all those things to feel better. So how do we fit into this? What's the mindset of these people? They're willing to try. That's the good news. And the trends show it. So we feel like, oh, we do have, between the super athlete and between, like you just mentioned, Nay, your wife or your friend, they're already interested in these things. So there's room for the mindset for us to say, here, we got something for you. Okay. Then to get to the vision, or for me, I use them interchangeably, the purpose. I asked this guy, Todd, I'm like, so why do you want to do this? Why are you doing this? Yeah, obviously everyone has to make money to eat. We have to do that. There's nothing embarrassing about that. But really, why do you want to do this? What are you interested in? What's the big problem you're solving? He goes, I don't know, Ray, man. He goes, I just want to help America sleep better. And I go, okay, that's your purpose. That's it. Quite clear. I get it. Like anyone in your company, if you tell them that's what you're here to do. You're here to make America sleep better. That's it. So it's quite simple to express the vision. Then you got to look at the current business situation, and this varies every single time. Of course, as you guys know, all the businesses you're doing are probably very different. I don't know what they are, but study them. I just showed this picture because I'm like, Todd manufactured in China, which presented a whole bunch of other issues than manufacturing in America. We have to understand that. What does that mean to your brand? What does that mean to your operations? What does that mean to your finance? So we studied the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it emerged that the design obviously was incompatible with this new audience. What looked like a medical device, which was fine for LeBron James, the guy like me, I'm like, I don't want to use that ugly thing. I just want it to be a little prettier. I want it to look like my nice looking. You can't even, I don't know if you can see it, but magic. But anyway, it doesn't matter. My iPhone or my Bose speaker, I want it to look nice instead of that medical looking device. So then you collect all your stuff. Now, how do you put all this together? How do you synthesize this into a guiding idea? And I chose to use the good old fashioned positioning statement. Like it's a marketing jargon thing, but it works. Like I find that thing really works. So, why throw out things from the past that work? As we develop new ideas, there are things that work, that I like, and the positioning statement was one of them. And I'm only saying this because one of my friends was like, the positioning statement is dead. And I'm like, not for me, it works for me. So it works for my clients. So it's a good thing. So you take all those things that we've analyzed before this, and you fill up this template. So up on the first few words are the audience. It's not everyone. It's those seeking their optimized selves. I'm just looking to improve myself a little better. It's not the guy on the couch. And it's not the super duper LeBron James. I'm just looking to improve myself a little bit. So optimize myself. Okay. Only Nuco, because we're coming up with a name for this company as well, creates proven sleep sculpting technologies. As in, what category? What are you selling? From a mattress pad to a sleep sculpting technology, because these guys are using they're using AI to figure out your body patterns, and they're modifying the temperature pattern to your needs. So instead of just calling it a mattress pad, you call it something more appropriate, which is what we decided to call sleep sculpting technology, because you get the idea more. And why is it able to deliver that? Because it dynamically regulates your core body temperature. As in, it can deliver that with its technology, as in, it ran chilled water through the pad to bring a temperature down. And what does it do? It consistently results in life-changing sleep. That's the big benefit. Your life will change when you sleep better. It's funny. We were laughing like we should send one to the White House, because it might help the whole country if this guy has a nice, if he sleeps better. So anyway, the point being, it's a good idea to communicate instead of just saying, yeah, you'll have a good night's sleep. It's actually life-changing. So this positioning statement is clunky and ugly, but you can look at it and go, oh, that's my business. I know exactly what it is. I know who I'm talking to. I know my competitive advantage. I know the category I'm in, and I know what I'm delivering for my audience. So this thing is quite helpful when you can create this statement. Then after this, you can have fun. Now you've done all your analysis, and this is the emotional journey. Remember I told you, like the Empire State Building guy, it's all about the emotional journey. So taking him through the previous stuff is all analytical. So you're frowning and you're looking down, you're thinking of all the numbers and all that. Then you come up with your positioning statement, which actually is very difficult, and you actually get angry when you're doing the positioning statement. You get mad. You're like, this is not working, because you put one thing here and moves the other thing, and you put that thing back and the other thing moves. So you go through this emotional journey of first feeling all like thoughtful and frowning, and then you suddenly get all mad, and then you come back the next day and you're like, now I can have some fun, because you find yourself in a place where you know what your business needs to be. Now, what's your personality? So we came up with a series of words that actually, there's a science behind this, and I'm not going to get into it. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But your brand's personality could be yours, or it could be just the business as it relates to your audience. And there should be an overlap between your audience's personality and your brand's personality. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly like it is, but a bit of an overlap, because maybe someone drives a Tesla, but that doesn't mean that person's whole life is just reflective of the Tesla brand. There could be other things that person does that's very different, but that overlap should be there. That common personality should be there. There should be that overlap. Okay, so these are some words that we were like, instead of being this dead serious brand, like it's a medical device, we said the insight we found from our audience is that habits change easier when you approach them positively and happily.
Ray, when you say the insight you found from your audience, so I don't know if you caught that our homework assignment is they're going to go out and interview like 100 people. So is that a method of how you found the insight from your audience?
Yeah, there's a questionnaire. There's a template of a questionnaire that you have a series of things you ask them, like beyond the obvious things of demographics. You go a little bit deeper and you try to understand how they will relate to your product. So you find out what their pain points are, you find out what the overlaps are, of your product as a solution for them. It's asking the right questions.
And how do you know that your question isn't promoting, like, what is it called? Like confirmation bias? Like when you're thinking of good questions, how do you make sure it's not just like, for example, do you care about the environment? Where almost everyone's going to say yes. You know what I mean? Like, how do you avoid that type of question?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that specific thing. I guess it's just a matter of, because you got to be open to not leading them, but not asking questions that are so open-ended that they don't know how to answer them. Mm-hmm. It's a bit odd, but if you want, I can send you a bunch of questions later that actually, you can use as a template and modify to your own product. Actually, I can take a little break from this, not break, but a detour, and come back to this. Carl, I think I've told you this, but this whole thing was around 4 or 5 years ago. I'm taking you through. Right now, my partner and I, with another guy, are at the stage of automating this. So we are actually working on the templates of these questions to suck them in and be able to synthesize this together with the entrepreneur, so that person is learning without a human involved. So I'll send you some questions that apply to each one of these buckets, in fact, not just the audience, but the competitive set, etc. So remind me later.
That'd be amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And then ultimately, hopefully, I don't know, yesterday we gave ourselves a deadline of 1.5 years to get this actually out there. We're working on the MVP right now, and then hopefully we'll get investment to allow us to, use something like OpenAI to get it out. Hopefully, let's see. Not hopefully, I should say, it's gonna happen. So then what do? You create. Now you've got your personality, you've got your positioning statement. Now you can have some fun. Like now you don't have to be all frowny and stuff. You can just let go a little bit and enjoy yourself. Because having done all that before this, there are ideas that are already emerging in your mind that you just have to put down, get them out. So here's one idea. Remember I had Nuco in the positioning statement? And remember the personality was playful and you have to be positive. So we came up with a name called EAP, which is sleep without the SL. And the whole thing, it sounds fun when you just say EAP, right? So, instead of calling it the chili pad, this medical device, call it the EAP. And what's the story of EAP? Rejuvenating sleep. Like it feels lively and, bringing things to life, EAP, the name EAP. And we just started putting language in there, kind of like the about section of the website. It personalized your sleep space. Like why call your dining room is called the dining room. Whereas, I'm sorry, why name a room after your bed? It's called the bedroom as opposed to a dining room is what you do in it. So we called it the sleep space rather than the bedroom. Putting little distinctive language in there to tell the story more uniquely and in a more fun way. Then, an idea that emerged was like, why don't we do a social media type of, game where we could, like you could keep score with your community. Or today I slept a 6, and how are you doing? Oh, you slept a 7.5. That's awesome. Things like that. So it's a playful approach to sleep. So you can change habits better when you take a playful approach, as opposed to more easier when you take a playful approach, as opposed to like, I'm gonna do this, and you tend to fail when you do. It's that hardcore mentality. Sub brands, because they have different sizes of these things, they have different modulations of these sub brands. We came up with some fun names. So from Eep, you get the ta-da, you get the woohoo, things like that. So I'm gonna go a little faster because I think we're running out of time. And then the packaging concept, I thought, why don't you open the pack and you hear a little sound thing that goes beep every single time? So that would be fun, a very memorable thing. Second concept, called Hyber, like hibernation, and also it implies digital connection, like cyber, even though that was kind of not really there. But because in doing our research, we found, because those 4 buckets, that actually pre-technology, when our species, whatever it was, would sleep in a cave, our bodies would automatically go down to 68 degrees. But now that we've got, temperature control and light control and all these things, our bodies are constantly in shock because we go from one temperature to another rather than the smooth change. This technology allows for smoother change based on your personal sleep system. So we call it Hyber, like hibernate, bringing back the old, going back to nature using technology. And that's what we wrote. It's going back to when we're connecting your body to circadian rhythms rather than the rhythms of electricity, essentially, light and temperature control. So you see how different these sub brands are to the previous sub brands based on this brand we came up with. So it's a little more like going back to prehistoric times. Primal, Core, Lucy, Tribe, Cave. Those are the sub brand names. Third one, and the packaging, again, to reflect. You see, the first one was more fun and it said Eep. This one's more like stone. These are concepts we came up with. Then this name was Youngblood Technologies. His last name is Youngblood. So we were like, this is about personalizing sleep. So it tells the story that this technology can adapt to your particular sleep needs and your particular personality. So we looked at these different types of personas, and you could do a test in the ad going, oh, I'm an athlete and I need to sleep like this. So in the mail, you could get the box that says, if your name is Chuck and you ended up being a warrior, you would get the personalized sleep system for you. And we develop icons for each type of personality. So I'm basically showing you a range of different types of brands that this guy could have used from this medical looking device. So from medical device to any one of these 2 or 3 things I showed you. And how does one implement it? Well, turns out ultimately, because the reality is we presented ideas that are in a perfect world. Well, some of those names were taken as already trademarked. So we did another session. He liked the name Uller, and we started giving it some imagery, developed a logo for it. And you see how it's changed now from this medical device to feeling more like a cool technology approach. And the packaging changed, and the actual device itself is design changed. And that's where these guys are at today. And then to take them to market, I'm going to show you some things I did for another client. We developed personas of each of these subsections of your audience and know exactly what the differences are between each, so you know what they're looking for and their pain points and things that are unique to each subset of your audience. And then you can create the funnel of, I guess, marketing using all those technologies available to you to get there. And in your case, it could be as simple as a website and social media, or your store. It doesn't have to be this grandiose scheme like, that we did for Russell Investments. And that's pretty much it for the presentation. If you guys have any questions or ideas or thoughts or even challenges, I'd like to hear them. So please, am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, you are. So you can just click on the top. Yeah, there you go. All right, so don't be shy. We have Ray for about 10 more minutes. So does anyone have any questions, comments about the presentation you just saw? Any curiosities whatsoever?
I have a question. So we're not sure if we're creating a brand or if we're simply creating a great product that we're going to do as a private label product. And so I was wondering how this is very interesting. Everything that you spoke about is very, very interesting, but it's really about creating this kind of aura around what we're presenting, the brand. So how would we kind of shift it a little bit to use some of this intelligence, but build it into the product more?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That's a good question. The way I see brand is it includes the product too. So even being a B2B white label potential for a product, it still has to have some kind of an identity, some kind of a meaning. So this essentially is just developing the meaning of the thing. Whatever the thing is, the product is a physical, I'll give you this story that someone did a test of 2 yellow pencils exactly alike, and they put it on eBay. One was just selling a yellow pencil, 2H or 2B or whatever it was. And the other said this pencil was used by a writer to write, this will and whatever. And that one sold much more. So you see, the product is the product. It's how you tell the story that's going to be meaningful to your audience, even if they want to white label it. So this thing is helping you develop the story. And this process also in the future could help you find new audiences for your current, you might have a certain type of white label client, but there might be another type you might go for, and this will help you do that. So it can apply to that as well, just a white label potential product. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question, and hopefully inviting you to brainstorm together too, because it includes a lot of topics you mentioned. So my team is working on we are not starting with a product, we're starting with a material. It's a material that's we already approved that it's really good and can be replaced with lots of other harmful material. And the thing is right now, identify our audience, when you don't have any product to start with, identify this audience. It's just we don't know where to start. And we did one of the design thinking among our group, which is about sustainable product, and the insight we got is to design trust, because a lot of sustainable products, it's too many out there, and customers don't know what to choose, and there's just so many information there. I guess I wanted to ask you, if you were in our brainstorm session, how will you lead the conversation when you only know this product is good, is a good product, but how we get to somewhere and we are okay, that's it, that's an answer.
So I'm going to try and answer it. I don't know enough yet about your material and the details, but I'll try and answer you and see if it's relevant or not. If it's not, you can tell me.
Okay.
The product I'm trying to develop now, I think, is in a similar state like you developed. It's not a product yet. It's in my head, and my partner's is in my partner's head. So how do we get it out there when we don't have a product? That's essentially, I think that's the question you're asking me, right? So what we've done is we've created a website that just represents the idea of the product, and we are creating the MVP based on I don't know how else to put it. There's a better name than it. I keep saying we were creating the fake technology, but essentially we are using Google Forms in lieu of you going to the website and it questioning you and using AI behind the scenes. So we are using Google Forms separately to be the MVP that we will apply to AI as it develops. So we're creating a fake product right now, as in we're testing it and it's not real. So that's the step towards like, how on earth are we going to sell a product that doesn't exist? So you got to find something that's testable.
So you don't have to pay like hundreds of thousands for a coder to create something that you haven't established is doing exactly what you want.
Yeah, and the beauty of this process, I'm realizing that what I just took you through, I was like, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing the enormous flaws in that process that I used to, and now the process is good, but when I applied it, like you asked me about those questions, Carl, I realized I was asking some of my questions were wrong. Now that it has to be automated, I'm like, oh, you tweak it, and you keep, so in the creating of this MVP, you learn so much that actually helps your concept get better. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did.
If I say it in my own words, you were saying like rapid prototyping is a key in the process.
Yep. In fact, I used to call this process rapid brand prototyping because it's connected to rapid product prototyping as well. But yes, I think rapid product prototyping is the right way to go when you don't have your product. And then test your prototype, and test it that's the beauty these days of, I can put up a fake website and it looks like a real product and you get feedback. You know how people are going to use it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, sorry, do we have time for one last question?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I know that you spoke about figuring out who your audience is and that whatever you're selling, you're obviously not going to sell it to everybody. You just have to start off with a few people. I was just wondering though, to what extent do you think somebody should think about scalability at the very early stages of creating their brand or even just their product?
Yeah, well,
that's thinking ahead.
Yeah, you have to, because then you're going to be thinking of how you take those same principles, and apply them to, to your bigger audiences. But I wouldn't worry that hard. It might seem like you're narrowing your audience down too much. You'd be amazed at how many types of people, how many people there are, even though they seem so small, focused. Mm-hmm. Like when I said, you know what I mean? It's amazing. I keep, another product I did this thing for, and I said, these guys were making this picture frame that was essentially a social media. Like you could get all your pictures in your group, in your finite group, sent to this frame, and you could all share your frame, so you could all have it was like ambient social media rather than having to go and check Instagram every 10 minutes.
Right.
Just popping there in the background in your kitchen or wherever. And the CEO was one of the founders of Twitter. He was like, Ray, everyone needs this. And I'm like, no, man, everyone doesn't need this. Everyone doesn't want it. Like, you can't. So we had to narrow down to who's most likely to use it to begin with, although everyone is happy to use it. And we figured out that a 35-year-old or so, 35 to 42-year-old woman with 2 kids is likely to buy it for her mom. And we said, you were going to sell to that woman to buy it for her mom. And he goes, but I want to sell millions of these. And I go, trust it, it'll happen. And it did. Not just are there a bunch of people like that, but when you speak in that clear voice, it sharpens your personality to be able to speak less generically, and tailor your message to that person and your product to that person. And once that happens, it automatically becomes more scalable because it becomes more useful and it has a personality and you know exactly what this thing is.
That makes sense.
Guy actually, my partner, Hide, and I were in New York in February, my last visit to New York. And he showed us this screen and he goes, it was a screen, their sales dashboard. And he goes, so this is where we did the thing and look at our sales going up. And I felt really vindicated. Like you know, when you really focus on your one single audience, it just it expands.
That makes sense. Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah. For instance, my product, the one I'm working on now, it can work for anyone. It can work for a CEO in a giant corporation. It can work for a CMO of, you know, somewhere in Procter and Gamble. But what we have decided, my team, my guys, we are only gonna focus on the entrepreneur like you. Why? Because we don't want to speak in jargon. We want to speak in plain English. So when you go to our site, when you go to our AI app, we're not going to throw things at you like, you know, all these different marketing jargon things to confuse you that maybe a highfalutin CMO would get. We want you to be able to look at this and go, I get it. Because if you get it, I'm sure as heck the CMO is going to get it. And it's going to make it easier for that CMO. And it's going to make it easier for that CEO to be like, oh, I get it. It's so easy compared to like, I need to have done an MBA to do this. You know, so you see how it translates to the bigger picture as well?
Yeah.
The little picture? Yeah.
Wonderful. So I guess any final thoughts for Ray before we introduce our next exciting guest and speaker? Great. Well, Ray, thank you so much for you know, taking the time to be here. It was incredible. I learned something every single time you present, and I know that you know, it was incredibly valuable for other people. And how would it be okay to get in touch with you if we have questions after this session?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, email, whatever. Yeah, call, you can give them info or you can funnel it either way. I'm good with
okay, so Famika and I will send everyone here Ray's email. So, you know, of course we want to be mindful. We don't want to like, you know, bombard them with like favor asking or whatever, but like Ray is extremely generous and loves answering questions. So like really great questions like what you asked, all of that stuff, you know, you'll be able to do.
Yeah,
so,
and really happy to help. Not just will I be helping you, but you'll be helping me, because as you just heard, the product I'm developing is for people, guys like you. So it's okay. Don't worry about and I know that there's no, you know, some, you know, set and forget easy answers in life. You know, it's hard work. As an entrepreneur, you're working 20 times harder than, you know, a typical employee, because you're gonna have to look at things that you've never expected. So I understand that this thing is like a build and you got to stay with it. So yeah, I'm good with helping if I can.
I absolutely love that it's a win-win, Ray, that people actually reaching out and asking you questions like actually benefits the product that you're developing, because these are young entrepreneurs, or like at least, you know, they're in their early stages of it. Everybody here is in a learning mode. So that makes me that much more encouraged if I was in this program to then just reach out to you. And so everyone, huge encouragement to reach out to Ray, and you're helping him as you're helping yourself. Those are the best situations.
Great. All good. Thanks. Cool.
Great.
Later.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, bye.
Wonderful. And so that was Ray. And then next, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Jennifer. She was a speaker in the past and she blew me away. She's like incredibly accomplished, and also her story was incredibly inspiring as well. And so I was so excited when she agreed to do this. She was one of the people I was most excited to be part of the program again. So Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. And please introduce yourself and what you do.
Hi, Carl and everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was way too kind. My name is Jen. I'm really excited to be here from Austin right now. Today's a really exciting day, especially with everything that's going on in the news and elections. So I hope everyone's also having a great day from wherever you're located. So just to give a little bit of background, I started out in design and then moved into marketing, and now more on the customer experience and community building side. So I mentioned that because throughout all of these experiences, which have been on paper very, very different, to go from graphic design and packaging design to something where you're very consumer facing. That journey seems like it's going, where is the story behind it? Where is the experiences that tie everything together? So I want to explain a little bit about what those commonalities are, and then lead into how it relates to user personas, user journeys, and some of the work that you might be doing right now as you're doing customer research. So let me share my screen very briefly. And let me know if you see it. Give me a thumbs up if you see it. And I also want to invite you to comment in the chat if you have any questions. I'll try to look over if I can. Carl, also, if you see any questions, please do let me know sometimes if I miss anything. But I do want this to be a back and forth conversation. I think it's much more helpful and relevant if you let me know exactly what you're curious about. So I first started in design and landed myself at a small graphic design firm, then went to Nintendo and did, that's where I started doing design work, which led into marketing, led into 3D printing at MakerBot, and then WeWork, so on and so forth. So I mention this again because it's been a crazy journey. And as you're going through that, I'll explain a little bit about that in a bit. But now, today, I'm currently at Hopin, and we do virtual events. It's a virtual events platform, and we've been around for the last year. And so we've seen a lot of growth and taken on a lot of conferences that were traditionally physical conferences. This was the Atlantic Fest, for example, a 30,000 person festival that started using our platform, our virtual platform, and they did their entire event series online. So I mention this again because if you have any questions about this, please let me know. But like I was mentioning before, throughout all these different experiences, the main string or main commonality through creating an experience for their user really ties back to these three different points of research. The number one, like I mentioned, user personas. Who are we actually creating a product or service for? And within that product and service, who are the different personas or target audiences that we're speaking to? So I'll use Hopin, this virtual events experience or platform, as an example to just anchor it. As a virtual event platform, we have users who are people who have traditionally been doing events and doing big conferences. Now they're looking for a different way to do conferences and events since the start of COVID. So our first persona are event producers. Our second persona are small businesses. Our third persona are more corporate clients. Like these are the big enterprise brands who are now looking for a place to, again, do their namesake virtual experiences. And so personas allow us to really target our messages and tailor our products and services for these different demographics. So a little bit about what Ray was talking about before. I caught the tail end, Ray, if you're still there, of your presentation, which was fantastic. But just to kind of build off of that. The second point is the user journey. How are people going through the experience from the start of finding out about our product or service, learning how to use those tools, mastering those skills. So again, using Hopin as an example here, how are they learning how to use this platform in order to do their first, second, third event? And then lastly, are we keeping those customers? So this journey is something that I'll talk a little bit more about. And then lastly, is the user experience. Where are we capturing or speaking to our audience? This could come through things like them coming to the website, them looking through our blog posts, reaching out through social media, so on and so forth. So this is definitely not all encompassing, but I've broken it down into these main buckets just for the purposes of simplifying this talk today. So let's go into a little bit about user personas. And I think sometimes the process of finding out who are we speaking to is often unclear. They're not neatly put into buckets as we hoped, and there's certainly a lot of overlap. So let's talk about two key ways that we can look at how to start developing user personas. So I'm using Hopin as an example, just so we can, again, have something to work off with. This is kind of a bite-sized version of what of a small project that we did recently to look at our key audience. So this is really relevant, I think, to some of you guys as you are in the starting phases of developing who your target audience is. So are we. We are still trying to figure out who are we speaking to for a platform that's creating virtual experiences or virtual events. That's pretty broad. Like anybody could be creating events, right? So going back to our key audience, the way that we've divided it is looking at our buckets of audience by demographic and psychographic. Demographic relates to more of these key metrics that we can find out in numbers. So what are some things that we can actually measure, and are things like physical things, age. We can certainly find out about somebody's age. We can find out about what industry they're in, the size of their company, their location, so on and so forth, right? Using these very basic metrics, we can start to build out at least very basic buckets of who we're looking at. Why we might use these? Well, when we're thinking about our key messaging, this is kind of a data that you can pull even from your Salesforce or CRM, or you can actually go out and collect this information yourself. You can look through industry research to find some of these data points. The psychographic portion of this is really interesting because this is where you're going into the field and developing hypotheses. For example, you find that there is a key industry that keeps coming up is a title that's related to events. So for our example, so we started to look at everyone that was in the event industry, from the event producer to the marketing person who was doing these events, to the video production folks who are related to the event industry, to hospitality, because we found out that a lot of these hospitality industries were affected during COVID and they needed a way to market their products and services. So they started coming and using a virtual events platform to do that. So after developing these buckets, we were able to hone in and talk about their psychographics. So what are their key motivators, beliefs, priorities, so on and so forth. I mentioned in this example here, COVID was a huge push. We realized that people were no longer doing physical events in person, so they needed a way to still do their events. And so they started looking for a virtual events platform. And their main priorities were to reduce their loss. All the revenue that they were making from physical events now needed to find another home. What were some beliefs? Some beliefs were that in these user interviews that we were conducting, that there was a lot of fear about using virtual events platforms because no one's ever done this before. There's a lot of fear of gathering a group of people into a virtual event platform and then it malfunctions. So these are really human behaviors that you can only really find out through customer interviews.
Jen, can I ask you, like, this is so valuable because the big assignment that all these participants are going to do is to ask like a whole series of people, like 100 people if they can. How did you ask, the questions, or like, how did you get that feedback? Like, we're scared of, what you just said, that example. Did people actually share that with you? Were they vulnerable enough, or how did you figure that out?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. And I definitely invite everyone to ask this because I think this is one of the most unclear parts when you're starting the research, you're developing hypotheses. They may or may not be true. And I will also say that sometimes we have these ideas in our head that like, the event producer must like be producing this sort of event, or that person must think this way. And through these user interviews, you find out maybe that's not necessarily true. So I mentioned that as we're going through this process, you're coming up with general hypotheses, guesses, best guesses about what you think. Based on that, find key users that you think would fit in those buckets. So let me go into, I realize I went a little bit out of order in terms of talking about this a little bit. User personas. Here were our hypotheses, right? Our hypotheses was that we had 3 main buckets, just based on that previous slide that I showed, that demographic and psychographic. Based on that, we thought, who would the event manager look like? Here's a key criteria for an event manager, and basically decide maybe I need to interview 10 people within this segment to see if that is true, if all of my hypotheses are true. 10 people within the event or the agency director segment, 10 people within the small business owner segment, so on and so forth. So get us enough of a sample size that at the end of the day, where you feel confident about your best guesses, your hypotheses, right? And I'll come back to this slide in a moment, but I just wanted to show you this process here. Customer interview questions, that the whole process of going through and asking and conducting interviews, this process is definitely one of the hardest because it seems very simple, right? You're going in, you're contacting your 10 people that you want to interview. But the key here is to do it in a way where you are coming from a very objective sort of standpoint, meaning go in knowing nothing. Try to take away as much of your prior beliefs as much as possible for this point as you're interviewing, so that you can go in with an open mind and ask these questions in a very objective way. These questions should relate to their basic demographics, like I mentioned before. Make sure that these are validated, because the information that you might be finding through your first phase of research, which I mentioned before, these are things that you can look up online, whether looking through somebody's LinkedIn profile, if that's where you're going for your first point of research, to pulling data from different CRM programs, or whatever it may be. That can often be a great stepping point or a starting point, but that information may not be true. It may be outdated. It may be the data that you're pulling might not be clean data. So in these user interviews, this is the best way to get first person answers. So I would validate the very basics, like I mentioned. What is their company like? What is their company size? What are the things that they are not reporting online that they'll share with you in a user interview? The next is their use cases. How are they using the product? This may be different from how you think your product is being used. And often this is a point where you might be surprised. What are they looking for? So product requirements. What are they looking for in your product or service? In our instance, for example, for a virtual events platform, we learned that there were certain elements that they expected from a platform like ours that we were not providing. So that was really great feedback. What is the experience like? How do they want to be contacted? What has worked well? And more importantly, what hasn't worked well so far? And then the value, what are we doing better than other competitors? And what are the things that we definitely need to improve in? So this set of questions can be customized how you need, but if I were to take away anything from this slide, it's to ask some of the basic questions to get validation. It's to get ask questions that should be surprising to you in a way, the use cases, and then be open to learning things that you did not expect. So as you are coming back to your key buyer personas, this is the point where you can start to refine this. So the process for us, when we started going back and forth between user interviews and then these key buyer personas, was that we found out our event managers were one of the biggest segments of our buyers, which we assumed, but we actually weren't sure compared to other segments that we had in our customer base. What we also found out was that the decision maker was somebody who was usually in a mid-level position. So that's really important, right? You're not speaking just to any event manager. You're speaking to somebody who can make a decision and say, hey, I want to buy this product or service. What are the things that they prioritize? What are the price points for them? So this is, again, as you're going through this, you can start to refine your different segments and add depth to these characters, these personas. And at the goal is to come up with some sort of sheet where you can really have a three-dimensional view of your key personas. So this again is not all-inclusive, and you might want to customize this depending on your product or service. But in general, I would say that what you really ultimately want to find out through all these user interviews and personas are, what are they trying to achieve with your product or service? What are the key business outcomes is what we've called it here, right? This relates to, how are we making their lives easier? Are we making their jobs easier? And point two, challenges. What are their biggest pain points? I think the easiest way to talk about pain points is, what is something that's taking up a whole lot of their time that we can create a product or service to help them improve? The third point, we talked about this a little bit before, was product requirements. What are the things that the minimum expectations that they're expecting from our product and service? What are the things that are non-negotiables versus the things that could be a feature set that we later develop? Purchase drivers, these are your motivators. What are the things that really push people to use your platform versus, or product or service versus any other competitor out there? So I'll mention that for, again, the example of virtual events platforms, there are over 60 to 80 competitors out there. And through our user research, we had to figure out, why did you come to our platform? Why are you sticking with us? Do you plan to stick with us? And then the trigger events. This is really interesting, because this is something I think we often overlook. Timing is one of the most important things when it comes to purchase intent and the actual sale. So you can deliver the most efficient, best product to somebody, but if you're not catching them at the right time, you're not going to make that sale. And so what are the trigger events that happen before they come and look at your product? And then why are they doing it at this specific point? So using this example here with Hopin, we found out that people tend to look at virtual events platforms only when they are about to create or about to deliver a big conference and that need arises. So the trigger point for us was around 45 days. So if we're able to capture our audience around 45 days before one of their biggest conferences, that's half the battle for us. And that might be the case for your product or service as well. And then lastly, what are the barriers to purchase? What's stopping people from doing this? And often this is something that customers may not share with you. And even in user interviews, when you're asking them directly, there's a little bit of friction. There's a little bit of awkwardness for them to tell you, like, maybe they like a competitor better, or the price point is a little bit too expensive. So these are really nuanced things that as you're doing your customer interviews, you might want to think about and consider. How do you ask people questions in a way objectively where they're comfortable with telling you where your product's failures are? This is such a huge point when you're doing user research. And I'll take a pause here and see if there are any thoughts, questions, or anything like that. Feel free to interrupt me. If we don't have anything, I'm happy to go on.
Please, guys, though, ask questions because this is such incredible information. I'm just thinking about, I just asked Fumika, my GA, who's incredible, to write down these 6 points so we can really go into it for information packets. This is exactly so helpful for what this big assignment we're going into. So please ask questions now when we have this time with Jen.
So something that I think others might find helpful is how would you approach like speculative product research or speculative market research? Because a lot of us won't have physical products yet or something to show them really, but how would you approach asking people and how that might inform a product or service?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So when you don't have a product or service yet, what you do have is a problem statement, right? Everyone can understand different common pain points. The common pain point of that was the example here was that we can no longer do physical events because of COVID. We're very fearful of gathering people. And we don't have any product or service to use for that. So that was a problem statement that we started with. And so now you could build around that. What are some things that would help you with that pain point? Would it be some sort of platform? Would it be meeting people in a different way? Would it be creating something where people felt safe to use, where it was, what are those things, right? So you could start to formulate questions and assumptions based around the things that you do know. So if you do want to share the example that you might have, we could also use that as an example, Kai, if you wanted to ask about anything specific, but I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, that answered my question really well. If you're looking for specifics, I'm doing like an outdoor apparel and soft goods company. And currently I'm thinking my target audience is going to be like really young climbers. And that makes it, with the safety standard, it makes it difficult to make something that they could then go use and give me feedback on. So just kind of looking for that speculative piece.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think I'm assuming that you are either a climber or you've done research on climbers, but you seem to, from what I'm understanding, know a little bit about what their struggles might be. Based on that, you can develop sort of assumptions on whether it's cost, whether the gear is too expensive, whether it's whether it doesn't, like the fit doesn't, usually climber gear doesn't look great or whatever it is. And then based on those pain points, ask about those pain points and see if that is a common enough pain point to solve.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Great, awesome. Anything else? I can also move on. Cool. So actually, I want to add one more thing here that I realized I did not do. Quotes. So qualitative and qualitative data. So both qualitative and quantitative, sorry. Certainly you can get metrics, like I mentioned earlier. These will help give you your kind of basic assumptions to go by. These are important, obviously, when you want to gather a bunch of data, and numbers have meaning, numbers have power. It's much more powerful to say, I interviewed 100 people and 50% of them found this to be a common pain point. So that's definitely really important. But to add on to qualitative data, polling user quotes is so important, because you're hearing from their mouths exactly how they're describing the problem, how they're potentially solving the problem, and then how they perceive your messaging to be. Is it accurate to what you want your marketing messages to be? So this is super interesting for developing marketing campaigns, so on and so forth. So I'll mention that, for example, we realized that the way that our platform was being used was a little bit different for how some of these event managers were being used. Realized that, for example, they were using different parts of the platform and hacking the parts of the platform so that they can customize events to exactly the way that they wanted. And that's super interesting, right? Because that was completely not expected. And also that helps us figure out what the next feature sets we need to produce are. We need to make it easier so that they don't need to hack this anymore. And by pulling these quotes out, you're able to create marketing messages around that. And another part that I might add too is aligning your other teams who are really important parts of this process to kind of get their buy-in and make sure that they understand the story. Because more often than not, especially if you, maybe in the beginning when you have a small team, more people can be in on the user research phase. But as you're building this out and people specialize, not everybody can sit in on these user interviews. So when you're able to pull stories and share this with the team who's not in on these interviews, that helps to create buy-in, that helps them to understand why this is important, why you should focus on a particular thing. Like for the climbing gear, like you're not sure if you want to add on an extra button because it's costly, right? But 50% of the people have said that they need that extra button. It's just going to make that big of a difference for them, right? And so you want to get that buy-in from your teammates or whatever it may be to add that value. So as you're doing this, different points that you can also pull out are target industries. Like, are there specific personas or demographics or characteristics that you can pull from these different personas? You can also dive a little bit deeper within. So for example, we broadly say that our target industries are tech, education, and professional services. But what does that even mean, right? There's so many different professions within those industries. So if you could get down to things like the titles, who are the people who are actually buying this? What is their general budget for this sort of product or service? What can they afford and what can we upsell? Things like that are really, really helpful as you're building out this target profile. And as you're going through this, you'll start to see how they're working through or going through the user journey, or how they're experiencing your product or service from the moment that they find out about your product or somebody refers your product to them, to the onboarding, and so on and so forth. Let me show you this slide here. So in a very simple way, we'll talk about it in 4 stages, using Hopin as the example again. So we find out that people purchase the product, but even before people purchase the product is a different phase, because we need to find out, how did they find out about our product? Did they get referred by a friend, or did they come by way of social media, whatever it is? But going from purchase to onboarding is when they are starting to use your product or service and doing the first action that you would like with that customer. So for the example here, our first intended action for anybody on Hopin is for them to come in and create that first event. Because once they create that first event, that means they'll have learned how to use the basics of our product and they might advance further. So what are the things that you need to do there? You need to give them the basic skills. You need to motivate them, encourage them to move into the adopt phase. So this is phase 2 of this cycle here. So now they've created their first event, using that example again. Now they need to, we need to get them to do that again. It should be building habits. And then going into this third segment of the cycle, expand and reach. How are we getting them to upgrade to new features, to explore different, to add on to their event, for example, or invite more people into the event? And then this last phase, are we retaining the customers? Are we keeping them motivated? Are they not only doing events on our platforms consistently, but are they also potentially inviting their friends back in and asking them to, or encouraging them to promote and do events? So using your example, Kai, again, yours might be something like somebody goes in, finds out about the jacket. We want to get them to try on the jacket during their onboarding. We want to make sure they know the features and why the jacket might be a little bit more expensive than a competitor's. In the adopt phase, they might be, they might have not only purchased the jacket, but they might have already used it and potentially they're taking photos of it. They're showing it on social media. They might be telling their friends about it. And the expand and reach phase, they might be using the jacket in a different way than expected. They might be using it just for other sports in other occasions. And then renew, are they buying an additional jacket? Are they telling their friends about the brand? So on and so forth. So you can see that this cycle is a continuous cycle and you need to figure out the specific activities and behaviors in each part of this phase. And what you're finding out here is that users are generally going through the same sort of decision-making process. They are finding out or they're gaining awareness of your product. Then they're considering it because you're not the only climber's jacket out there. We're not the only virtual events platform out there. We have so many competitors. How do we compare in the whole ethos or the whole universe of choices that they might have? And then in this the third phase here, it's the decision-making process. How are they finalizing or how are they making their top 3 choices and saying, before they go into the purchase phase and say, I'm going to buy this, like I've committed, that's it. So as you're walking people through this buyer journey, you're also highlighting different behaviors that you will see. And this set of behaviors are generally around the same. You might switch a product or service around, but at the end of the day, you need to go through these 4 stages before purchase. So it is you can kind of expedite this process here, or sometimes it might take a little bit longer depending on what you're selling, depending on the price point, depending on a lot of different considerations. But again, let me take a pause. If you have any questions, feel free to pop in and ask in the chat or out loud.
Great. I love that you use the actual example. So I'm so glad that Kai, that you shared that, because it's pretty amazing, Jen, that on the fly, you're like adapting this like product that was just thrown at you and you're adapting it, which shows, you know, the value of this chart that you're mapping out for us. You know, it's really incredible.
Thanks, Carl. So lastly is the user experience, and I won't dive a whole lot into this because I know today was more about research and going through that process. But as you're developing your user journey, your buyer journey here, you're thinking through the experience and the different touch points where you might be reaching users at. So this might be related to any sort of marketing material or campaign that you have. And I'll go back to this as an example, but for awareness, how are people not only finding out about your product, but are they already in certain places that you can capture them at? So for the example of Hopin, we are targeting event producers. So one really actionable item that we might do is tap into any LinkedIn group that's related to events, production, hospitality. Are there any other sort of blogs they're reading, events that they're going to? Who are the influencers in this space? And you can start to think about this for your own products and develop hypotheses around where you might be capturing people. Again, at this point, timing is so important. So are you capturing them at a time that speaks to them, whether it's by season? So going back to the example of the climbing jackets, at what points are they thinking about buying a jacket? Is it a seasonal thing? Is there an event happening, a big event happening that you can tap into? Is it after their warranty has maybe expired on some products, so they're thinking about purchasing a new jacket again, whatever it may be? And then the consideration part, like I mentioned, what are the touch points that you can push to help people with their consideration? And these might be things like going to, so the example here are peer reviews on G2. So G2 is a review site. It might be less applicable to you guys right now, but you can use G2 to look at competitors. What are the reviews on that specific industry that you're focused on? What are the, this is a really great tool for research, really. And seeing who the competitors are, seeing what people are ranking them on. And you might also take a look at referrals. What are people saying on social media when they are not only recommending a product, but what are the brands that they're pushing their friends towards? That sort of thing. So a lot of these things are the research that you will do to kind of formulate your strongest hypotheses as you are doing your user research. And then decision making. Again, referrals are such a big part of any sort of sales cycle. Word of mouth is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, points for helping people make decisions as to whether they purchase something or not. So if you're able to help people make referrals, either by way of creating content that they can share, offers that they can quickly repeat, people can quickly repeat back to their friends, or making that process easier, that helps with the decision-making process for somebody to go finally purchase. So the user experience touch points are ones that you should focus on primarily, because it's so easy to say that you might need to do a website, a blog, you need to be on 5 different social media channels to push your first product or service. And that becomes very, very overwhelming. So the more that you could be specific about where you're finding your audience, the easier you're going to make it for yourself. Because if you excel at promoting something, doing Facebook ads, for example, then focus on that. You don't need to focus on 10 other social media channels or outlets or whatever it may be. Just when you want to push an MVP out, you want to try to keep it streamlined, simple, to the point, and focus on the channels where you are more or most likely to succeed. So we have a little less than 15 minutes left. I don't know if we need to use all of that, but again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And I also encourage you to ask anything specific, because then we can kind of brainstorm together here.
What do you think, guys? Is everything makes sense? You have any questions about what you're going to be asking, how to formulate the question, how to think about it, how to even maybe reach out to people, how to find people to reach out to? Any question like that?
I think that's a really good, really good starting point, actually, Carl, because I had to do this yesterday. And so I think that in general, when reaching out to people, it helps to have certain templates. And when you're doing your first outreach, it helps to create an email template where you're giving people specifics about why you're reaching out, why them specifically. People definitely respond to compliments. They respond to why you're reaching out to them specifically, what they can offer. The easier you can make this for them, the more likely they are to say yes. I would also put a time frame to it. Hi, I'm reaching out to you because I've seen that you're really experienced or really interested in this sort of thing. I think that you are somebody who knows about this expertise, and I would really love your input as I'm doing some research. Are you available for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it may be, in that time frame for me to ask a few questions, and make it clear as to when it could happen, add in your Calendly invite, things like this that are simple, but that really, really do add up and yield in a better result. Because if you're doing 100 user research or interviews, that's a lot. That's a lot of time that you're putting in, and a lot of back and forth.
That's super helpful. Just and also, just so people aren't feeling too intimidated, if you don't get to 100, the 100 is aspirational, right? It's not like you fail the course or whatever. The main thing is to just like learn as much as you can and work towards that final pitch at the end. But listening to you, Jen, I'm thinking about maybe targeting clubs, or if I'm a student, then I could target like that if it's related to my product or service, right? And thinking about how to get down to tapping those types of groups and so forth, organizations. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Yeah, so two different things here, right? I sometimes getting too much feedback can also delay the decision making. And so I do think capping the number of interviews is really, really helpful. So for example, when I showed you the slide with the 3 user personas, you might have 5, you might have 6, but if you cap the number of user personas, that really, really helps, especially when you're trying to get an MVP off the ground. So 3 to 6 is max, I would say. And then within those user personas, the number of interviews that you do, limit those as well. You don't need to do, like Carl was saying, was 100. For example, we capped ours at 25 for each user persona, maybe even a little bit less. We just want enough information where we're getting diverse enough of opinions and ideas that we can start to formulate our best assumptions, and then deep dive into any additional research that we need. And then in terms of clubs, any sort of interest group, any sort of place where an aggregate number of people are coming together and talking about different things is always a great starting point. But within that, I do think it's important to not just generalize from the start, and really see within that group, are there subsegments? Having a diversity of opinions from the start is helpful. so that you are not skewed one way or the other. And I think it's very human for all of us to believe something and then basically want to confirm it. It's confirmation bias, right? We believe that our virtual events platform is made for events managers. So we'll just keep on interviewing only, mostly event managers. Then of course we're confirming what we believe, right? So we had to also look at other demographics out there and realize like, oh, actually there's like other people who are on here. Actually, we have teachers who are using this platform, or entrepreneurs, or people in hospitality. So you want to make sure that the confirmation bias, or be aware of confirmation bias, so that you are, again, not just researching to confirm things that you kind of are already leaning towards.
So that, and also I mentioned earlier about leading questions. So for example, like a huge thing at Pratt is sustainability, and a lot of even these products and services focus on sustainability. So a question like, do you care about the environment, or how much do you care about the environment? Almost anyone, even if they would never pay a cent extra for a sustainability product, would say, of course I care about the environment, right? So how do you kind of mitigate that? I know that I don't mean to put you on the spot, because that's a very hard question, because even Ray was kind of like, but these are the thoughts that go through my head.
I think that's a really good question, because it's so easy for us to do that. And I'm personally working on this as well. But I've been fortunate enough to also sit in with product managers who do the interviews with me. And it is so helpful to see how objective they are when asking these questions. Number one, the questions are meant to be objective. So when we go back to what we're actually asking, we're first asking logistical things to make sure that we're confirming that these things that we think are true, meaning company size, what industry are you actually in, the number of employees, that changes and fluctuates, especially if you're talking to entrepreneurs, right, who hire freelancers, or their situations change frequently. Then we go into use cases. So we're not saying, hey, are you using our product to work on conferences or to produce conferences? We're saying, how are you using this? What is your use case? We're making it as neutral as possible. And then instead of saying, hey, are you using our platform because you're worried that you can't do events in person anymore, we're saying, what are the product requirements that you're looking for? So any way that where you can make this, again, as basic as possible, and also stop yourself from talking too much. That's one key learning. Sometimes we can ramble, right? And when we ramble, we add in extra information that's not needed. So however you can shorten that sentence, the better.
That's super, super helpful. Thank you.
I have a question about if your product is kind of unique and you don't know who is going to use your product, like how do you find a person that might use your product to interview with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So going back to a little bit of what Kai was saying, it's a speculative product, right? Those are variables that you don't know, but what are the variables that you do know? So why did you come up with this product in the first place? What were the key pain points that you were trying to solve? Those are things that you already have ideas about. So I would go to people who have that sort of, that have those buckets of problems, and see if your product or service might fit them. So if you also want to share your example, we can brainstorm here, but that's what I would say. What are the things that you already know, and work off of that? And if you find out that you're not sure who you're serving, then that's a really hard problem, right? You're building something that you're not sure who the end user will be. It's very hard to paint that picture. So as many upfront images, pictures, personas you can create, the easier it is for you because you're able to confirm that there's going to be a buyer for your product or service.
And something that you're making me think of, Jen, is that is like when they say about lean launchpad methodology or like failing forward or pivoting, right? Is like this, all these questions can make you realize maybe there isn't like a big concern, but there's a concern that you didn't even realize, and you can adjust. And so that your product suddenly, you know, it goes in a different direction. Has that ever happened to you before?
Yes. Yes, for sure. I think a lot of this happens often with people or companies. An example might be before this, I worked at WeWork, and we'd often come up with ideas of who our members were, who WeWork members were, without sometimes we didn't do enough user research in the beginning. We didn't really ask if they were looking for an event series, for example. And then you kind of produce an entire event series. So you start with, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if we did an event with moms with working moms who need a place to go after work, and they want to bring their cats because they get lonely, right? You start to like, oh, you're like, that's so cool. That's a great idea. So you start to build up these ideas. And then midway through, you're like, actually, not a lot of moms want to come after work. They're tired. Actually, not a lot of moms want to bring their cats. They're more like dog people. So the sooner you can confirm these smaller steps, the better you can, the more productive you are. And then also it's saving you time and money.
Nice. Anyone else when we have these precious final minutes?
Yeah, I have one more. I'm sorry. You go first. You go first. You go first.
It's okay. Don't worry about
I
it.
already asked one. Okay, so my question is, if you are more towarding like B2B business model, like business to business, like how do you reach out to those business? I mean, maybe they're, you know, leader, like manager, like how do you reach out to them?
Mm-hmm. If you are doing something that's B2B, you're not usually going to go to the industry leader. You're not going to go to Apple, Microsoft, whatever it is, to ask them the questions first, right? They're usually smaller players who are trying to solve the same problem or have that pain point. And this is actually even more interesting, right? Because when you have a small business, they're usually solving that problem in a hacky way. They're super scrappy, and they're probably doing it by using 5 different products to solve that problem, whatever it may be, right? So in the example of, let's say, WeWork, right? It's a co-working office, right? For small entrepreneurs, they're not going to be able to afford an office space, right? So their hacky way of finding co-working space and meeting new people is going to a cafe, which sounds very obvious to us, right? We all do that, but that's what I mean about not going to the industry leader first, just seeing what people are doing to solve that same problem. They're finding like a completely free way to find co-working, and that's why people started going to cafes in the first place. That exploded because it was the cheap, free thing to do.
Awesome. So this is the final minute we have. Anyone? And if not, Jennifer or Jen, thank you so much for, this is incredible. You gave so much knowledge, and it was so perfect for the assignment that we're now leading into, and it was amazing. So
Thank you for having me, and feel free to reach out. Yeah, definitely happy to brainstorm on anything more specific you may have.
Great. Awesome. Well, and is it okay if we reach out to you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Email would work. Yeah, I'm happy to email here.
Great. Awesome. So we'll include that, and yeah, thank you again. It was awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Carl.
All right, everyone. So we made it for these 3 hours, and you guys were awesome. I loved hearing about all your products. And so are there any questions that we have about the homework assignment before we sign off? Because now is really wonderful. And I guarantee you, if you're wondering something, there's probably at least 10 other people that are wondering the same thing. It's so interesting on Zoom doing this and seeing. Okay. So that's it. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This is session 2. I'm super psyched at how much we learned, and I'm really excited to hear about what you guys discover through your reaching out to people. We're going to follow up. Famika and I and James are going to send you clarification on assignments. We're going to send you contacts so that you can thank and follow up with any questions that you might have for Jen and Ray. And then please use us. We have the Slack channel, and we just want to support you and keep the learning going so that you guys just keep developing and eventually have this opportunity to pitch at the competition, earn the certificate through this program, and just learn this incredible business training that you're getting. So thank you, everyone. And if you want to celebrate, go celebrate whatever you might be wanting to celebrate, and yeah, this is awesome. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to this every time we have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Changed because I don't know any other way to say it.
Oh.